of a sudden award scheme comes up and nominates you, then now you put every faith, everything you've invested into that music, that video, everything. You put everything, all that weight on the award, because you feel like maybe you haven't been appreciated for that way. But now that the awards nominated, it's this way you are going to be appreciated. So you put your weight and every faith on there. Meanwhile, there can be only one winner. So when you don't win the award, you think that your hard work has gone unappreciated. But that is an award to appreciate you, yes, but it doesn't mean that the work still don't have value. The work still have value, but award makes us forget that winning or not, your work still have that value. That's the thing. So you feel disappointed.
Do you ever cringe when you look at the people you're in the category with?
Yeah, that's a very tricky question.
You cringe?
I laugh.
You laugh? Why?
Because I feel like I'm very comfortable where I'm seated in there.
Oh, okay. Wow.
I mean, I feel very cool and happy. And the people that I'm in there with are very good. I mean, they've put out great work under the year review and everything. But I just feel like I stand aside, like far from.
Oh, okay. Yeah. You're not made to fit in. You're made to stand out. Right?
I'm made to, yeah, exactly.
I like that confidence.
Yeah.
So, like you told me, I'm still looking out for it on the 13th of May.
Yeah.
I'm hoping that I will interview you with your plaque.
With my plaque in my.
Now let's look at the photo album.
Yeah. Yeah.
15 tracks.
Yeah.
Okay, so there's one thing I want to find out from you. You released an LP, 25 tracks, an EP, 8 tracks, an album, 15 tracks.
Yeah.
What is wrong? What's going on?
Yeah, I guess you're asking that because of in the manner where
the quantum on the LP. Normally LP. Fathers 12. EP maximum like around 4 or 5. Album maximum like 8.
8, 10.
In this kind of
in this kind.
But you are. It looks to me like you're going old school.
Old school, and that's a photo album. Photo album is an old school thing. Yeah, you see the thing. And in the second place, as an artist, I'm not talking about in the business space. It's a whole different thing. I mean, it's show and it's biz. Maybe from the show side also, I want growth on my side as a talent as well. I may have choose to maybe release 5 of those songs as an album, and then hoard the rest of the 10. But then it only means that I need to still keep going back to drop what I've recorded some years ago, because I still have them there.
Okay.
You understand? But sometimes when you don't give everything you have, you can't take anything new. So sometimes I need to empty myself up to absorb new energy, new music, and sound new. And we, as artists, we change. Our point of view, our mindset, and everything change over time. Maybe there might be something going on in the country, and I really want to hop on it and hop on a beat and talk about that right now and put that song out. But that's not the song I can put out right now from my team or anything, because we still have 10 songs that we haven't dropped yet. And then it's like I'm behind time. I'll always be behind time. But I always want, when people hear me, when they listen to me, they should hear my current state of mind, know what I'm saying, I'm feeling now, what I'm saying right now, and all that. So that's why I like to empty my catalog.
How important is rap to you as a person?
Oh, very, very, very important. I feel like that's my space in this industry. That's what I will contribute to Ghana. Everyone is doing what they can do. People would sing, people would do R&B, dancehall, Afro-pop, whatever. This rap thing is also my space. How I would also, hold Ghana down. So I hold it dear to myself.
Would it be okay if you should be called a hip life or a high life artist or a hip life artist simply because you're coming from Ghana, because the agenda is to push one gender?
Yeah, I would be okay. I don't have a problem with that.
To be called a hip high life artist?
No, not a hip life artist. That would be our own, because maybe they will tell you that rap is what we call Kasahari. Okay. So I rap. So somebody should see me and maybe can be like, guy, we are Kasahari. I rap. So rap is Kasahari, right? So when you break it down to our terrain, our local thing, we call it hip life. Maybe people will call it hip hop. We call it hip life. There's no problem with me if I'm called that. But it's just that I hope I would just only hope that when somebody say hip life artist, they don't imagine a certain sound to come from me, because that's where they will get it wrong. Because maybe when you say I'm a hip life artist and then you think or you expect me to go jump on a certain beat, you want me to be on a strictly hip hop or a strictly hip life type of beat. Okay. That's where you get it wrong.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So you don't have a problem, I mean, being put together as a journal pushing Ghana, but they should know that you're versatile.
Yeah, versatile. So the thing is that what I was trying to explain with that is that maybe anytime you mention hip life, people expect to hear some certain sound. Maybe what Kuami Eugene them are doing right now, is still something they picked from the high life that they came to meet. But if they say high life music, because there's a mindset of what high life should sound like, the kind of instrumentation it should come on, they would expect to hear that. And if they don't hear that kind of thing that they used to hear from maybe Daddy Lumba or someone, George Darko, them, they will be like, but he's not doing high life. Okay. So now when you call me a hip life artist, the only problem is that I might jump on a beat that has 808s and is banging, like maybe you hear Rick Ross jump on a beat. Okay. And you still should understand that I'm still doing high life because this is coming from Ghana, sound coming from Ghana and everything. Okay. Yeah.
Wow.
So for the whole industry, the artists I hate.
You don't like him?
No.
Don't you think that's such a strong word to use, that you hate him?
I hate him, yeah. Okay.
Why do you hate him?
Because I hate him.
Why? There should be a reason. Why?
Because of what he told me. Since that it took me like more than a week to eat.
It took you more than a week to eat because he told you that your numbers are too small and then he can't feature you.
It was because of him that Shatawale called me.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. How did that make you feel as a young boy? I'm sure before the event happened, he was somebody that you liked.
Yes.
Right?
I really liked him.
Okay.
Yes. Please.
Speak up a little bit. It's like your voice is really down.
I loved his music, his career, his lifestyle, his everything.
Okay.
Yeah.
You loved him.
I loved him.
And so I'm sure your father reached out to him that he wanted to feature you. Or you were there personally when he said that? He said it to your face.
In front of me.
Wow.
Yeah.
How did that make you feel at that moment? Speak up. Your voice is really down. Speak up.
It made me felt bad, but I didn't really feel bad because I knew I'm the only one that can do something no kid on this music industry can do.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Wow. So when you went home, I'm sure you cried at some point.
I cried.
When you were going home, you cried. But I was not there. I want to find out, how did your father react when he said that?
He told me to not cry because he told me he had a surprise for me that day.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. But in front of Kuami Eugene, how did Daddy react? What did he do? What did he say? Did he try to correct him that you don't say that in front of my son? Or, I want to know what the whole scene was like.
He's someone who respects, so he doesn't talk to anybody because that day he really wanted that feature. So when Kuami Eugene said that, he was like, oh, but at least you could do something to help my son. He was like, no, he has no numbers, he has nothing and nothing and nothing. So
wow.
He really felt bad, I'm telling you. That day he really felt bad. Both of us, it took us more than a week to get it.
To get over it.
Yeah.
Right? And at what point did Shatawale come in the picture? It was after the Kuami Eugene incident?
Yes, please.
Okay, that was when Shatawale came in the picture.
Please.
And did it make up for that, disappointment that you experienced from Kuami Eugene?
Yeah.
It made up for that. So would you say after the Kuami Eugene incident, you lost love for him?
Not an incident. It was something he actually said, but not an incident.
Okay. So after he said that, you lost love for him.
Yeah.
You didn't want to hear anything about him again.
Yeah.
I have a final question to ask you, and of course I will definitely have to ask you this question. Now, the young boy, photocopy, granted an interview. Of course, I can't let you go without asking you that question. And yes, he said that he hates you because you didn't go ahead to have a collaboration with him. What's your take on it?
Okay, so before I say this, and before anybody out there label me as a menace, I want to say this. Whatever I'm about to say is not to the little boy, because he's just a young boy. You understand? He doesn't understand some of the words he used. So whatever I'm about to say is not to the young boy. He's just a little boy. So what happened was, I was at, God bless Richie's mom. I was at Richie's mom's place and...
Auntie Alberta.
Thank you. And we're eating on Mutio. At Osikope, and the little guy with Kwachi came around. That's the dad. And they came and he said, Kwame, I want to talk to you. This is my little boy. I said, oh, I know photocopy. Let's vibe. And he says the boy needs a feature. And I said, actually, it doesn't just work like that. Because I'm from Fadama. Trust me, I left the hood and I have over 50 boys that are left in the hood. I can pinpoint and name all of them. If I say I'm featuring everyone, trust me, the career will end. We not go benefits like that from her. You understand? So it takes good conversation to just do a feature. You understand? Kuami Eugene is not just there to do features with everyone. It takes good conversation to have a feature. So meet Richie, come, you're Kwachi, my friend. I actually know the father. You're my friend. Let's go together. Me, I go follow you, make we talk to Richie and the whole team. Because it's not just even about just Richie. I have a road manager, I have somebody that invests and whatever. So let's just talk, have a good conversation. And if it's possible, we'll do the song. Okay, so because Kwachi talked, he's my friend, he can just come and do it. I mean, I knew Kwachi from this music business. He's an acquaintance. He didn't like the fact that I said, we should have a whole conversation about. He thought, oh, Kwame said, it doesn't really work like that. That's what people don't get from the outside world.
You may be willing to even do, but
trust me, there's a young man here, and his talent as well. He said really good things about me. Does that mean right now we should enter the studio and do music? It doesn't work like that. So both of them weren't happy about the answer. But then again, Kwachi is my friend. We took pictures. And there's a video out there that I'm vibing with the boy. Trust me, do you think I would say such a thing to this young boy, hurt him so bad, and still take pictures with him? I won't do that.
Long story short, why I talk about superiority complex. Long story short, one day, Basket was in a club with a glass of drink and all that. So I was sweet. This one, God has now blessed the two of us. Everybody is doing well and all that. So I walk up to my guy. I said, Bright Okbosha. Yeah. He's my senior colleague, but he's my junior in real life. So, Bright Okbosha, Alpha, my guy. Yeah, cheers and all that. So we got talking. So I said to my friend, I said, you see, God has blessed us. You have a house in Lekki now. I have a house in Lekki. You have a child now. I have a child. God has blessed us. Things has
The Parliamentary Subcommittee on Health all have worked so hard and remain focused and dedicated in ensuring that the use of this important technology is now part of the health delivery architecture of our country.
We are supposed to vaccinate children every month. We have to move to the nearest community, that's Odanko for vaccine. Come and use them. After that, you have to send it back. But for the drones, you just type it, Papa, John to chips, we need this. Within the next 30 minutes, the drone will be here. It forces you pick everything, no breakages, everything is there, and it is very convenient. Anybody who brought it, the person who thought of it has done very good thing to us. Yes.
Tonight on Business Live, bulk oil distribution companies urge the Bank of Ghana to be tactical about moves to reduce dollars auctioned for fuel imports. We'll hear from its Chief Executive Officer. Also, Bank of Ghana debunks a report of issuing 500 Ghana cedi notes, insisting it has no immediate plans of issuing higher denominations. Plus, individual bondholders exempted from government's domestic debt exchange program unhappy after Finance Ministry defaulted in payment of coupons on maturing bonds. We'll hear from the convener of the Pensioners Bondholders Forum and a former Director General of the Securities and Exchange Commission. We have these and more. Thanks for choosing us. I am Beverly Broom. We take a look at the details now, and the Bank of Ghana has reduced significantly the amount of dollars it is advancing to bulk oil distributors to finance fuel imports for the second quarter. But what has influenced this action, and should we be worried about this development? The following report has more. New data from the Bank of Ghana shows that for the second quarter of this year, the central bank is advancing $120 million to the bulk oil distributors. This is to help them with the required dollars to finance the importation of finished petroleum products. The data showed that this actually represents about $230 million reduction from what is sold from the distributors from April to June last year. According to the Bank of Ghana, the move can be linked to the benefits of the Gold for Oil program, which has reduced drastically the amount of dollars that these bulk distributors will need to finance fuel import. Officials of the bank have told Joy Business that it is one of these reasons that has helped to improve its international reserves despite the current challenges facing the economy. This has gone a long way to help in stabilizing the Ghana cedi. The country's dollar reserves ending February this year stood at almost $6 billion, representing 2.8 months of import cover. Moving on, the Bank of Ghana is debunking reports that it is in the process of issuing 500 Ghana cedi notes for circulation. There have been reports that the bank is working to introduce the notes, which samples all over the internet. James Eshen has the rest of the story.
Speaking to Joy Business, Director for Currency Management at the Central Bank, Dominic Owusu, quashed these reports. The bank says it has no plans of printing another higher denomination banknote.
Any anytime there is a currency issuance or currency change, Bank of Ghana will come out with appropriate press release from the central bank to inform the public. In recent times, we have seen social media, and sometimes you see designs of currencies that are put on the social media. We saw recently that Bank of Ghana was going to issue a 500 cedi coin. Bank of Ghana has not issued any press release on this. So please, it is not true.
Mr. Owusu has also been speaking about report that the 1 peso coin is no longer in legal tender and it's out of circulation.
I think that is why you are here as a media person. Help us to send that information across. That these coins are legal tender. The central bank has not demonetized it. So please help us. But what I'm saying now, and which you have to send to the general public, is that these coins continue to remain a legal tender issued by the central bank, who has been mandated by law to issue and redeem currency. So please send the information out there so that the public will continue to accept it. The central bank, through its engagement with its stakeholders, continue to do education. We have an educational committee. We go around. When we are issuing banknotes, we have flyers going around that we try to educate the public. So I think that as we celebrate the Ghana month, let's do ourselves a lot of good to educate the public on how to keep the currency. And as I've said, it is the business card you have. It is the only thing that everybody has. When somebody wants to know Ghana and they come into the country, the first time they get in contact with is the currency. So help us to market Ghana by keeping the currency clean.
The Bank of Ghana says it's remained committed in embarking on various sensitization programs to educate Ghanaians on how the currency can be handled. Reporting for Joy Business, James Ishen.
We go back to our earlier story as the Chamber of Bulk Oil Distributors is urging the central bank to tread cautiously over its resolve to reduce the amount of dollars sold to them for fuel imports. Now, according to Chief Executive of the Chamber, Dr. Patrick Ofori, the move is too early and could come with some consequences. And the Chief Executive, Dr. Patrick Ofori, joins me via Zoom for more of this. Doc, thank you so much for your time here. First, have your members reduced their dollar demand because of the Gold for Oil program?
Not entirely so, because most of our members, although some have patronized the Gold for Oil, the G4 Oil program, but there are the big ones that have got their term contracts with their major international oil traders, that they still will require some quantum of dollars to be paying them. Although the Gold for Oil has helped those that can't actually land those parcels on their own, but the big players that also land such products and then also even supply to the mines. Don't forget that none of the Gold for Oil products are supposed to go to the mines and, let's say, the power sector. Basically for the pumps, for the normal our trotro drivers and the private cars, those who use those for more or less the domestic consumptions. But the industrial aspect of our members who supply to the mines requires to land these products. Don't also forget that there are some major OMCs that don't want to have anything to do with the G4O. Basically, some of the big players that also control about, the two of them control about 37 to almost 40% of the market. And it's these same BDCs who will be supplying to these OMCs who don't want to partake in the G4O processes. So clearly, cutting down on the dollar requirements from the initial quantum that was given to us. I think the last window we had about 21% of the demand that we place in for, and we think it is too early for us to be taking such drastic measures. Although we really appreciate the initiatives and the steps that the central bank has taken, and will continue to engage them to see how best and how possible we can all help to ensure their quest to manage the currency and then also to keep the economy back on its track. We all will contribute our best to ensure they achieve their policy goals. But we just want to also let them be aware that we are not out of the woods yet, and that they need to tread a bit more cautiously in cutting down drastically.
But how do you think the Bank of Ghana's decision will affect your operations?
Like I did indicate, the good thing currently is that we are able to assess the delta that they are unable to give us, the gap between what we require. The commercial banks have got access to it that we're going to will definitely procure from the commercial banks. But like I said, if you go to the market and you know that the Bank of Ghana is guaranteeing you a certain quantum, it gives some form of confidence into these IOTCs who supply to us, and then it gives the banks also some assurance that at least they know that even if it's $2 or $3 million that every 2 weeks they are getting, they know that also reduce your credit line to ensure that you are in a position to lock in other cargoes and then also make commitments to them. The only danger is that when we go to the commercial banks and we are unable to raise the required quantum of dollars, that is where the speculations and other things may set in for that to go. But I think now the commercial banks are also very liquid in terms of the FX, and they are able to meet our FX requirement. But the rate that we receive from the commercial bank is non-comparable to the ones that we receive from BOG, and that is why we always commend the central bank for initiating such a laudable policy.
But Doc, are all your members fully participating in the Gold for Oil program?
Not all our members are participating. Like I said, some of them have got term contracts with their major partners that they will definitely go through that. And then also because of the requirement for the Gold for Oil, some of them may not necessarily be able to do that, because if I'm supplying to the mines and other Totals and the shares who don't really want to partake in the G4, you really need to look at other areas to land the product so that you can also keep those filling stations and the mines also with the required products requirement to also keep their mines running.
Thank you so much, Dr. Patrick Ofori, Chief Executive of the Chamber of Bulk Oil Distributors. Thank you so much for your time here. Away from that, some individual bondholders who did not participate in the domestic debt exchange program have accused the government of defaulting in paying coupons rates on its matured bond. Let's go on Zoom and speak to Dr. Eduana Nientri, who is the convener of the Pensioners Bondholders Forum and also a former Director General of the Securities and Exchange Commission. Thank you so much, Doc, for your time. Please tell us, which of the coupon payments is the government defaulting now?
Well, the government has paid only 2 of the coupons in the first payment, and another 2 this latest payment. 2. The first one was the one that was due on the 6th February and 13th February. That was the one that was paid by the instruction that the minister gave on 24th. Later on, that's 14th March. Later on, the minister again on 24th gave instructions for 2 to be paid. The two were all due and payable on the 20th February of this year. So 4 of them has been paid. We now have 14 more outstanding. 14 more outstanding. One of them, the earlier one, is a principal payment, which has been outstanding from 20th February. So it's now about 38 days in arrears. Then there is another principal which matured on the 3rd of March, which is also there to be paid from 3rd March up to now. That's about 27 days. Then in between the March and now, beginning of March or 20th of February up to now, there are other 14 coupons that are due and yet to be paid. So our complaint is simply that the government should not be paying the coupons at its own pleasure. That is the term government think it will want to pay, then it pays. This is a contractual obligation on the issuer of securities. Once the issuer has issued the securities, it is mandated. It's an obligation on the issuer to pay the coupons on the due date or to pay the principal on the due date. Nothing short of that is expected of the issuer of securities.
But did you or the bondholders receive any message from government suggesting that it will default payment?
No. You see, this is a long story. When we were expecting our payments around the time that the whole exchange program was getting to an end, it didn't come, we understood, because the program delayed and government said there were some administrative issues to be dealt with, especially reconciling who has tendered in and who hasn't tendered. So we understand. And the government said 13th, we should give government by 13th March. We waited 13th March, nothing was heard. We had to issue a press release before government came in on the 14th to say it was going to pay 2 of that. At the time, government was saying it was going to pay these 2. There were several ones outstanding. The government said it's going to make a statement on when to pay the rest. Then we waited, we were not hearing anything. And when we raised issue again, the government came out on the 24th of this month, which was Friday, to say it was going to pay 2. They were all coupons that has matured on the 20th of February. And again, said in the statement that in due course, the government will come out with a date on when to pay the rest. And that's not the right thing should be done. Initially, why we thought, yes, because we're doing some reconciliation businesses, some other administrative issues, we allow you to do that. But if everything is now sorted out, then there is no, we can't understand why the issuer would try to deal with investors like that. Now, about 14, as I said, 14 coupons are due. 2 principals are due, you know, and we don't know when government is going to pay that. And that's why we have issued this letter to government and a copy to we've copied the minister, the Parliament, Speaker of Parliament. We wanted the Parliament to be in the know that this is what is happening, and that the pensioners are not going to allow that to go on forever. So we've given government 3 weeks to resolve all these issues and return to normalcy, where as soon as the coupon is matured, you find your account credited. As soon as your principal is due, you find your account credited. That is how you must deal with exempted bonds. not the way government is dealing with pensioners who were exempted from the program.
So what's going to be the next move from you and the other bondholders?
Well, for the pensioners, we have said we were exempted and we should be treated as such. If we exempt any bonds, you have effectively said, as for your bonds, I don't have any problems paying. So go and sleep. Anytime your coupon is due, just go to your bank and it will be there. Anytime your principal is due to be paid, go to your bank and it will be there. That is the dictate of the market, and government is not doing that. We have drawn the attention of government to that. This is about the third time we are doing that, and we think that we will not allow it to continue, and that's why we are saying by 21st, all these anomalies have not been resolved for us to return to normalcy and get our coupons as and when the coupons are due. Principals as and when the principals are due. Then we would resume our picketing to press our demand.
We leave it here. Thank you so much, Dr. Edu Anane Entry, for your time here. He's the convener of the Pensioner Bondholders Forum and also a former Director General of the Securities and Exchange Commission. This is Still Business Live. We'll take a quick break. We'll be back with more. Please stay with us.
Every day, people have money emergencies. Ma, I need my school fees emergency. Mommy, chop money emergency. Emergency. Catch it. I'm your rent emergency. Now, there's a new emergency number in town.
More money, challenge and enjoyment. At the top life we got.
Dial star 770 hash for all your money emergencies and chop life.
Dial star 770 hash for money emergencies and get easy and quick access to your money, loans, and other banking needs. EcoBank, the Pan-African Bank.
We've had news file over the weekend, and an interesting part of the conversation focused.
Oh no, we are out of range.
Oh, don't worry, Daddy. I have Alexa in my bag.
Alex, what?
Alexa, open Multimedia Ghana and play Joy FM.
Super Hits Radio, Joy 99.7.
Listen to Joy FM, Hits FM, Love FM, live on your Amazon Echo. Listen to your favorite multimedia radio stations live on your Amazon Echo device by saying, Alexa, open Multimedia Ghana, play Joy FM or Hits FM or Love FM. Or catch up on your favorite podcast by saying, Alexa, play, and then the name of your favorite podcast from Multimedia Ghana. For a list of all podcasts available, say Alexa. Ask Multimedia Ghana to browse programs.
And we are back like we never lost signal.
Alexa, welcome to Multimedia.
Thanks for staying with us. Now, the West Africa Regional Director of CAT International, Apiakusi Dumako, is calling for the expedition of the competition policy and bill into law. The law seeks to promote competition and create greater market confidence by ensuring an equal market for all businesses. According to Mr. Dumako, if the law is not passed soon, the market could be taken over by cartels controlling the provision, supply and manufacturing of essential goods and services.
British High Commission and the Ministry of Trade and Industry, in partnership with Co-Water International and CAT International, held a stakeholder consultation meeting to discuss the implementation of competition policy and law. Speaking at the event, West Africa Regional Director of CAT International, Apia Kusi Adomako, urged government to fast-track the passage of the competition policy and bill into law to guide the conduct of the market.
When the law is passed, it also comes with the establishment of the competition authority. And when a firm is found, let's say, price fixing, when firms agree to fix prices, when a firm decides to abuse their dominance or monopoly or do things which the law has defined, has created as an offense, the law gives the authority the right to impose fines. We want to urge the Ministry of Trade to ensure that the competition bill is passed into law in no time.
Director of Policy at the Ministry of Trade and Industry, Michael Opoko, explained the importance of having a competition policy and law and why there has been a delay in its implementation.
I'm sure, having gone through this, you've seen a lot of legal issues. But the legalese aside, competition is an economic issue. From the perspective of government, everything ends with how does the consumer benefit? It's not who is sued, who is not sued, but then from government's perspective, how does the consumer benefit? If there is abuse of dominance, what is the impact on the consumer? If there are mergers and acquisitions that lead to increase in prices, what is the effect on the consumer? And so from a policy perspective, economic analysis remains central to the development of competition law. And so the law went through several processes. It was on its way to cabinet, and then the AFCFTA negotiations began. So the ministry thought it wise to hold on to it.
Second Vice President of the Ghana National Chamber of Commerce and Industry, Stefan Miezan, disclosed that his outfit has started an advocacy project to ensure that the competition policy and bill is passed into law.
It's rather unfortunate that as a country, we don't have that. That is why we are gathered here to think about it and also push the government to ensure that a law like that can be passed. The members of the general members of the chamber, the business community, we are looking forward to that. And as a chamber, we've also started an advocacy towards that to ensure that yes, we can get this law passed to help the general business community, and more especially that as a country, we've gone into this agreement of the AFTAC. It's an open market.
And that's how we end Business Live tonight. Thank you so much for your time here. For more business news, you can log on to myjoyonline.com/business. I'm Beverly Bro. Enjoy the rest of our programs.
An American journalist arrested in Russia on spying charges pleads not guilty after appearing in court in Moscow. The White House has condemned his detention in the strongest terms. Brazil's former president Jair Bolsonaro has returned to the country after 3 months of self-imposed exile in America. It's his first time back in his home country since his supporters stormed Congress in January. In a shocking murder case, a man has been found guilty of killing 9-year-old Olivia Pratt-Corbell in Liverpool in the UK last August. Olivia's mother outside the court said that she was ecstatic at the verdict. And the Vatican says that Pope Francis's health is improving as he continues to be treated in hospital for a respiratory infection. He was admitted on Wednesday.
Now on BBC World News, Hard Talk asks tough questions in interviews with people who are shaping the news.
Welcome to Hard Talk. I'm Sarah Montague. Close to 50 million people around the world are close to famine, a number that is rising because of war and the effects of climate change. It's the job of the World Food Programme to feed them. My guest today, David Beasley, has been running the organisation for the past 6 years, and in that time has more than doubled the money it raises. And yet, as he admits, the numbers starving have only got worse and worse. He's about to move on, so what did his time at the top of the world's largest aid agency teach him about one of the greatest problems mankind faces? How to ensure no one dies of hunger. David Beasley, welcome to Hard Talk.
Thank you, Sarah.
Now, you have said that when you took on the job 6 years ago, you thought you could put the World Food Programme out of business because you could solve world hunger. At that time, there were 80 million who you described as marching towards starvation. And yet the figure now, who you would classify in that way, is 350 million. Was it ever solvable, or is it just an impossible job?
Sarah, it was and it is. Unfortunately, when I took this role, as you said, I thought we could put the World Food Programme out of business. There were 80 million people in extreme hunger. There was no reason with all the wealth and all the technology we couldn't do that. But what happened? We had war after war, then climate shocks on top of that, then COVID with the economic devastation, and now, of course, we got the breadbasket of the world, Ukraine. And so we have just compiled on top of one devastation to another. Now we're facing 350 million people that literally don't know where their next meal is coming from, marching towards starvation. And it breaks my heart that we have not been able to end world hunger, because I still believe we can do that.
Well, even now you think it's possible to end world hunger?
I do. If we end the wars, there's no question. Even with climate shocks, we can do it. But we've got to end the wars, and we've got to change our approach long term with regards to how we address extreme hunger in many of the troubled countries around the world.
Okay, but you're talking about, I mean, you're making it sound sort of like something that's very eminently doable. We've got to end the wars. We've got to, even if it was one war, the Ukraine war. As things stand, is it just going to get worse?
Yeah, at this stage, I would say it is going to get worse. And when you look at the last few years, when I took the role, 80 million people, and then it jumped to 135 before COVID. And that was because of war and climate shocks. Then COVID comes along and it goes from 135 million to 276 million. That's pre-Ukraine. And the economic devastation from supply chain disruption, et cetera, from COVID, as well as debt, and then the Ukraine war with pricing of food and fuel and inflation and devaluation of the currency, we're now at 345, 350 million people. And so here's what's really to put in context. 200 years ago, when there was only 1.1 billion people on planet Earth, you had about 95% of the people in poverty or extreme poverty around the world. Well, we've reduced that to less than 10%, but now we're going backwards. So we built systems that really are addressing poverty and hunger. Now tell that to the 10% that we're not reaching, and we can reach them. We can improve the systems to reach them, and we must do so. But right now, Sarah, we're going backwards for the first time in hundreds of years.
Okay, well, let's talk about like, the emergency of the Ukraine war at the moment, because there has been the Black Sea grain deal, which has just been extended by President Putin, and which allows food out of Ukraine. Only for 60 days it's been extended for. Now, that presumably has made a huge difference. Is there any justification, though, for Russia's position that they'll only extend it for 60 days and only if Russia can export more of its grain and fertilizer?
No, there's no justification for that at all, in my opinion. In fact, when the war started and everybody in the world was focused on the Eastern military front, I was zeroed in on the Odessa port region saying, look, if you don't open up these ports, we're going to have a global food crisis around the world on top of what we've just experienced with COVID and climate shocks and war in other places around the world. So I was saying you've got to open up these ports because Ukraine alone grows enough food to feed 400 million people, and we were exporting over 5 million metric tons per month through those ports. So it was critical to get those ports open, which is why early in this military campaign, I went down to Odessa and tweeted to Putin saying, you will bring famine to the rest of the world if you don't open up these ports.
Okay,
and we were able.
But one of the problems is Russia also is responsible for feeding huge parts of the world, and they argue that their grain and fertilizer is blocked when it shouldn't be, because it's not meant to be affected by sanctions, but it is. And President Putin says that sanctions are to blame for the food security in the global south. Does he have a point about that?
Well, everything is involved and engaged with the problems we have on food security. And I think what we've seen in this context of war with regards to Ukraine, it was like fuel on top of a fire. And that's what we're facing. And I've said to leaders around the world, I don't care if you love or hate Russia, but you've got to have their food and you got to have their fertilizer, because the entire world is at risk right now. This is no time to play with food and fertilizer, so we must move these supplies, which is why we've been pushing for sanctions relief to assure that food supplies move around the world. And I know many countries like the United States and France have worked with us to make certain that these supplies move, but there more must be done. This is a complex area and it's politically driven, but right now, the humanitarian dire consequences of the poorest of the poor are at stake, and it is going to get worse in the next 12 months.
You say it's politically driven. The EU Commission President, Ursula von der Leyen, describes it as a cold, callous and calculated siege by President Putin on some of the most vulnerable countries and people in the world, with food becoming part of the Kremlin's arsenal of terror. Is she right? Has Russia weaponized food?
Well, three things. Number one, they need to end the war. That's the best thing that could happen. Number two, make certain that fertilizers and food can flow in and out of Ukraine, as well as the whole entire Black Sea region. So we've got our issues here. There's no question about it. And the pressure needs to be brought to bear on everyone involved in this conflict, and especially Russia, to allow the foods to flow and allow the farmers to get into the fields. Because let me say this very clearly, because Ukraine doesn't have the fertilizers it needs. It can't get in the fields that it needs to produce the amount of food that's necessary around the world.
Okay, but do you think Russia sees food as a weapon?
That's a good question. I'd have to give that some real deep thought, but I don't think there's any doubt that in this context, it truly has impacted the food security situation around the world.
You're loath to go there because of what the politics of it and what it might mean.
Yeah, I mean, I've been pretty clear about Russia opening up the ports. That's been very clear from my point. We're a United Nations organization, and I've been pretty strong and pretty tough in this area, but at the same time, we have to work with all sides to move supplies. But at the same, being very clear, Russia needs to help us move these grains, allow us to move everything of food-related and fertilizers out of the port, as well as the rest of the world.
And the greatest effect, is it being felt by Africa when you look at what's happening there?
The poorest of the poor countries are impacted the most. And now we're talking about Africa. You're talking about a continent over 1 billion people. 70% of all the food that's consumed in Africa is produced by smallholder farmers. The smallholder farmers can't afford the fertilizers if they can get them. So we're looking at a significant decrease of food production by the smallholder farmers in Africa. This is a continent, quite frankly, that ought to be feeding the rest of the world, but for a whole myriad of reasons, compounded by the fact that many countries in Africa depend upon Russian food, Russian fertilizer, and exports or imports from the rest of the world.
Right, so they are the collateral damage in this. They also seem to be bearing the brunt of climate change. Is that a fair assessment?
Yeah, it's a very, very fair and a very accurate assessment. And I can give you example after example. For example, like Somalia, 5 rainy seasons back to back didn't show up. We go into the Sahel region, for example, where you've got just drought, flash flooding, and the people literally are starving to death. And you compound that with the war, you compound that with fuel costs, food costs, lack of availability. You can see that many of these nations here are very vulnerable, and particularly like in the Sahel, where you've got ISIS and Al-Qaeda, and you got Boko Haram, and in Somalia you got Al-Shabaab, who exploit these types of situations. And that's why we must be in there to help stabilize these regions. And we've got solutions. While the world deals with mitigation of climate, we've got to have adaptation for these countries to survive in the interim, and we've got solutions for that.
Okay, I'm going to come on to the solution shortly. I just still want to look at the drivers for this. And one of them, I know your own Director of Climate Change says, Gurno Laganda, he said that climate is pushing the aid system beyond the point where it can deal with the runaway train. What did he mean by that?
Well, for example, the number of people just in the last couple of years, 2 years ago, 30 million people were displaced because of climate alone, and that number is only going to get worse and worse. When you look, regardless of your views of climate change, what's causing it, and I can assure you what we're seeing are the results of a changing climate, of the number of incidents around the world. We're seeing it firsthand. And let me give you an example in the Sahel. In Niger alone, where historically, if we just come in and provide food, you'll be doing that for another 1,000 years. Charity is not the long-term solution. But when we come in and do resilience programs, putting down water wells, rehabilitating the land and water canals, these types of systems, the amount of aid that's needed drops dramatically. And for example, last year, just in Niger, 80% of the villages that we implemented resilience programs did not need humanitarian support when the Ukraine-Russia shock took place. And that literally was 500,000 people that didn't need aid. Do the math. That's about $30–40 million that we saved by putting down resilience programs, and they were able to survive with, in fact, more than survive, and some of them were able to thrive. And I can give you incredible positive stories.
We'll come back to that. But you're in a situation where, as we say, the numbers have just got intense. The demand is huge. And you're in the position of having to make choices. You said we're taking away from the hungry to feed the starving. How do you decide who gets fed and therefore survives?
Well, several factors. Number one, our donors, where we receive the money from and how they direct the money in general. Then number two, we have a classification system of the most vulnerable to the least vulnerable, IPC level 5, 4, 3, etc. Now, the UN use that lingo and nobody knows what you're talking about. I use terms like famine, knocking on famine's door, marching to starvation, on the brink of starvation. And so right now, as you and I talked about earlier, we've now got 350 million people marching to starvation. Out of that, 50 million in about 50 countries, give or take, are knocking on famine's door. So obviously that 50 million has got to get food, otherwise they clearly will die. So one of three things will happen in this situation. One, you will have starvation, death, famine. Two, you will have a destabilization of the nations. Three, you will have mass migration. And I can assure you that it's 1,000 times more expensive not to go in and help these people in a time like this.
But sure. But at the moment, the World Food Programme are making decisions, and whatever classification system you use, where, for example, at the moment you're cutting rations to the Rohingya refugees in Bangladesh because you're short of money, and their monthly allowance is going down to $10 per person, cut by just under a fifth, when you've already got children in those camps who are stunted and underweight. I just wonder, and take your point that it's how much you can raise from donor countries, to some extent they do, but that's also based on the decisions that you make as to who lives and effectively who lives and who dies.
No, I had someone that said to me one day, you've got the greatest job on the planet, saving the lives of millions of people every day. And I said, I do, I really do. But I want to tell you something that's going to bother you. I don't go to bed at night thinking about the children we saved. I go to bed at night heartbroken about the children we couldn't save. When we don't have enough money, Sarah, we have to choose which children eat, which children don't eat, which children live, which children die. And so our classification system, we reach the most vulnerable first. And when we don't have enough money, and you think about the fact there's $400 trillion worth of wealth on planet Earth a day, how in the name of God can we be in this situation where we don't have enough food to feed hungry children? And let me add right here, because you were mentioning the Rohingya, in Afghanistan right now, we literally just cut 4 million people in IPC level 4. In other words, they're knocking on famine's door, 50% rations. Syria, we're running out of money there. I can go on and on where we're running out of money. Short-term crisis, but we need long-term solutions, which include, of course, ending wars.
You've done this for 6 years. Does it weigh heavily on you, those sorts of choices?
It does. It really does. It's heartbreaking when I go. And, you know, I think one of the most difficult questions I've ever been asked is that, how do you stay positive? And, you know, when you're at the headquarters or at the UN meetings or at capitals, that's not where you get fired up. When you're out there in the field and you see children come from behind the war rubble building, coming out of just misery, and you see the little smile on their face, that's what gives you hope, because that's my little sister, my little brother, and that's what it's all about, and that's what fires you up. You just can't give up on humanity. You can't give up on those little children. They're not numbers. They're children with names.
Indeed, but when you're talking about the solutions, I mean, you're obviously, I think it's what, $23 billion you're trying to raise this year, so much more than in previous years. The US Special Envoy for Global Food Security, Carrie Fowler, said, "The ranks of the food insecure are growing faster than our ability to provide humanitarian assistance. We can't get out of this crisis by supplying food aid." I mean, is there a point where you have to say, look, there's no point raising more money to feed starving, we need to do things differently?
Well, I think it's two things. You still got to provide support in the immediate interim. There's no doubt about that, because I can assure you, like we saw in Syria and other places, take Central South America and the United States or the Syrian crisis. And Germany did a very simple study. Failure to address the Syrian refugee crisis early on, you ended up just in Germany with 1 million refugees over a 5-year period, $125 billion. That's 70 euros per day. Whereas we can support a Syrian in Syria for 50 cents per day. And guess what? The Syrian doesn't want to leave home. But if you don't have food, you don't have peace. In South America, a study that showed, for example, children at the U.S. border at a cost of $3,750 a week per child, per shelter, $60 million a week, versus $1 to $2 with resilience programs so that farmers and families can grow their own food versus just handing out food. So short term, we've got to stop the bleeding, because it will cost 1,000 times more. Because I get that question, Sarah. You can imagine, why should I send money, you know, from the United States or Germany down to Chad or Guatemala when I've got education, bridge needs, funding needs? And the answer is you're going to pay for it. Yeah.
Okay, but you have also said it's critical that pressure be brought to bear on the host nations, that they themselves take ownership of their own issues, almost suggesting that some conditionality be attached to the aid, and that possibly you don't have the flexibility to do that.
You've got a myriad of scenarios there, and each country is different, whether it would be a Marshall-style plan for every country, because there should be expectations with regards to countries. Now, one of the things I also add to donor countries is that in many of the places, regardless of the leadership in a nation, at least let's provide food security so that people can take care of themselves and not be so vulnerable to the politics of their nation. If people can grow their own food, take care of themselves, then they're less vulnerable to the bad leaders, the dictators, et cetera, et cetera.
Okay, because African governments back in 2003 promised that they'd spend 10% of their budgets on agriculture and rural development. There's actually only 2 countries that have met that target 20 years on. You don't feel that it's necessary to have some sort of conditions put on the host nations? Because that's what you seem to be implying previously.
Well, yeah, and what I've done meeting with leaders, and when you've got limited amount of money, is that with a donor nation, when you've got limited dollars like we do right now, which countries can you be the most strategic and most effective with your aid? Obviously, we don't have enough money, so which countries are willing to work with us so we can reach the most children, the most families possible? And I think we've got to turn up the pressure on everybody with regards to where we are right now.
Okay, what about China's role here? Because the United States has been very critical of what they say is hoarding. Others might suggest it's stockpiling. James O'Brien, head of the US State Department's Office of Sanctions Coordination, says it's a very active buyer of grain. And in fact, the Department of Agriculture, US Department of Agriculture, suggests it's got 69% of the world's maize reserves, 60% of its rice, 51% of its wheat. Can just even releasing that would push prices down? Should it be doing that to alleviate world hunger?
Yeah, I think China holds somewhere between 50 and 60%, I know, of the world's wheat and grain. United States, for example, holds about 6%. And with the world food crisis that we're facing right now, particularly with the poorest of the poor not able to afford the food at the pricing level that it is right now, which is why we thought the Black Sea Grain Initiative was so important to alleviate, commodity pressure to bring the pricing down. And it's still at a 10-year high. So China, in my opinion, needs to be doing more. The three things there, Sarah. Number one, I certainly appreciate what China has done to end a grave amount of hunger in their own country. Amazing success story. Number two, they need to step on the humanitarian development side. Let me just give you an example. In 2022, the United States, on an average, gave the World Food Program $22 per person. The United States population is about 332 million people. That was $7.4 billion that we received from the United States, the world's largest economy. The number two largest economy in the world is China. Well, $1.4 billion. We received a little less than 1 cent per person at $11 million. So China needs to do more in the international realm of things. They need to be more engaged in the multilateral context. The United States leads in this. Other countries do a great job. But in my opinion, China needs to be more of a team player for the world at a time like this.
We're talking about where responsibility lies. Does the responsibility also lie with rich people?
Oh yeah, you know how I've been very clear about that. Particularly with COVID, when the average billionaire, their net worth increase was like $5 billion a day. It's incredible, incredible. The average net worth increase for billionaires was about $5 billion a day. So I'm not asking the billionaires to charitably resolve all these issues. While we have a short-term phenomena, I want them to engage in the game with all their technology and all their expertise, intelligence. Engage with us. Let's end hunger around the world. Nothing's more important than ending hunger for the people around the world at a time like this. And we are at a world population of about 8 billion. What do you think it's going to be when we have 10 billion? We're struggling now.
And briefly, has any philanthropist responded to your call when you ended up in a spat with Elon Musk?
Well, some of them have engaged, not necessarily with us. Some of them have engaged with us, not to the level of the degree I want. Our private sector donations have gone from about 20, 30 million to about 500 million, but the needs are so great, as you can imagine, we need their engagement.
Now, what about you? 6 years at the top of this organization, you go, but I imagine you're going to return to US politics. That's what's been suggested. Is that your plan?
Last week, my daughter had our third grandchild, a little girl, and I'm looking forward to going home and relaxing for at least a few weeks or a couple of months, and we'll see, to take a break and really think about what's next. I don't know yet. We'll see.
But I presume that a return to Republican politics in the U.S. is what?
Who knows? I don't know if I'll return to politics. I definitely will return to helping people. And quite frankly, I'm really upset with both parties in America right now. I think the Democrats and Republicans, while they come together on food aid, and that is a beautiful thing. Just last week when I was in Washington, meeting with the Democrat and Republican leaders, both ends of Pennsylvania Avenue might be fighting on everything. But when it comes to food security, they come together, and that's a beautiful thing. That's good, yeah.
David Beasley, thank you for coming on Hard Talk.
Thank you.
Joy Change Speakers Series 2023, My Case for Constitutional Review. To review or not to review after 30 years. Join our guest speakers, Inusa Fuseni, former chairman, Legal and Constitutional Committee of Parliament, Richard Jupenuku, former presidential candidate of the Progressive People's Party, Professor Bafo Ajumanduya, Chief Executive Officer, John Kufuor Foundation, Oliver Baka Vomawo, lawyer and researcher for the Constitution Review Commission, Ace Anan Ankoma, lawyer and good governance advocate, and the chairperson of the National Commission for Civic Education, Kathleen Ade. Join us this Saturday, April 1st, 2023, on the JoyNews channel and Joy 99.7 FM for this special edition from 9 a.m. to 12 p.m. It will be hosted by Samson Ladi Ayenene and Dr. Mami Mensa Bonsu. Joy Change Speakers, impact and influence for a better Ghana.
The Parliamentary Subcommittee on Health all have worked so hard and remain focused and dedicated in ensuring that the use of this important technology is now part of the health delivery architecture of our country.
We are supposed to vaccinate children every month. We have to move to a committee that's or down controls for vaccine. Come and use them. After that, you have to send it back. But for the drones, you just type it, papa, John to our chips, we need this. Within the next 30 minutes, the drone will be here. It forces you pick everything. No breakages, everything is there, and it is very convenient. Anybody who brought it, the person who thought of it, has done very good thing to us. Yes.
The all-new Executive Lounge is tailored to highlighting corporate brands and bring you closer to the C-suite executives of various organizations. Premiering in this edition is SIC Insurance PLC.
For the top 10 insurance companies in Ghana, if you look at the management of each insurance company, there is at least one person who had to work at the managerial level in SIC. That is the story of SIC. It also, we produce the best.
You can trust us for claims payment. We have the dedicated staff, we have claims handlers that can always handle the claims. In fact, over the years, 5 years, we've paid over 300 million as claims.
If you want to measure the health of a company, you are looking at its liquidity and its solvency. On these two fronts, we have done well to improve the liquidity of the company by putting in place prudent investment measures that make sure that constantly all liabilities falling due are handled.
The Executive Lounge starts showing on Saturday the 1st of April at 12 noon on the JoyNews channel, with a repeat on Sundays at 5 p.m. and Wednesdays at 10 p.m.
A fifth of the babies who come in will end up dying.
This is impactful journalism, the storytelling that stretches your imagination and shines a light on the underreported issues.
Normally, if you talk, it doesn't change people unless they see it.
This is impactful journalism. It is fearless, independent journalism that reshapes thoughts and crushes stereotypes.
But I had no more strength in me again.
The person must be made to know that what you have done, yes, it would have deserved murder.
This is impactful journalism. It provides context and meaning to the different perspectives.
Children are born with sin, and therefore if you don't baptize them and they die as children, then they will go to hell. This is funny.
This is impactful journalism. It provides context and meaning to the different perspectives. This is JoyNews Hotline Documentaries, compelling stories changing the status quo.
Hello, good evening. Welcome to Our Front. My name is Raymond Akwa. Today, the fate of the economy of the Republic of Ghana hangs in a balance. This is because Parliament, as we speak, has still not considered and passed 3 key tax bills. The government of this republic is hoping will help us get an IMF deal. These bills are the Income Tax Amendment Bill, the Excise Duty and Excise Stamp Amendment Bill, and as well as the Growth and the Sustainability Levy Bill. Now, approval of these outstanding bills is supposed to help government facilitate the approval of that $3 billion IMF deal, which is supposed to help this economy function properly. The passage of all of these outstanding revenue bills are also necessary, as we are told by government, for the effective budget implementation, as well as boosting the efforts made by this government and increasing what's supposed to be a tax to GDP ratio from what they say is less than 13% compared to what's in the sub-region of some 18%. Now, already, government has completed a tariff adjustment by the PURC, the publication of the Auditor General's report on the COVID-19 spending, and the onboarding of the Ghana Education Trust Fund, the District Assembly's Common Fund, and the Road Fund onto what's called the Ghana Integrated Financial Management and Information Systems, GIFMIS. What is outstanding, which is supposed to be the 4th out of the 5th, the passage of all of these outstanding bills, which is necessary for the effective implementation of the budget, is also supposed to help us get into what is called the situation where 4 out of the 5 prior actions are completed. But as I speak to you, Parliament, which was supposed to consider these bills by 2 p.m., is yet to make any definitive decision on it. Parliamentarians are still hanging around, and we understand there's a lot of negotiation going on since government has banked its hope on these 3 bills. These bills, the government is telling us, will be the very key point. Let's not forget that it was the hope of this government to get an IMF deal by the end of this month, which appears clearly by the number of days left for us to have the month ending, and also the number of days left for Parliament itself to rise and go on a break because of the Easter break that we're supposed to be having. This is perhaps a seminal moment in whether or not we are getting the IMF deal the next quarter or this quarter, or we are getting it anytime soon. These bills are supposed to help you appreciate what government is doing on this thing. In this conversation, we will start from the Parliament of the Republic of Ghana. We will certainly be giving you an update and why there's a hold-up of a sort in that house. Beyond that engagement in the Parliament of the Republic of Ghana, we will be telling you what the bills really mean with distinguished economists and people with tax competence. Let me introduce you into the conversation before we go to Parliament. A man who's previously run the economy of Ghana and is a tax expert by all standards and qualifications. Let me bring on board the Honorable Sektepe, a former finance minister, joining us from the United States of America. You're welcome, sir, to Our Front.
Thank you very much, Raymond.
So we understand
good
that...
evening to your listeners.
Brilliant. So we understand that those in the minority are kicking against the bill. In fact, the Member of Parliament for Boko Central, Mahama Yaiga, is supposed to lead a charge by proposing amendments to every single provision, which requires that the provisions are one by one deleted, making all 3 bills almost useless, which will end up being rejected. The majority, however, is very hopeful that this bill ought to be passed. What has happened in the last almost 4 hours is a stalemate of a sort, no decision on whether or not Parliament is going to pass it or not pass it. Parliament is actually racing against time, as tomorrow the House may be compelled to adjourn and make way for Christmas break. I want to bring you into this conversation because it's important. You were the finance minister the last time we went to the IMF. The biggest argument for these bills is what has been told us, that without them, we cannot get an IMF deal. How factual is this particular claim?
Thank you very much. And good evening to your listeners, viewers and listeners once again. I think it is, in a sense, good for the government to be admitting at this point that this is a prior action. I don't think that when the bills were sent to Parliament, government indicated that they were prior actions. Some of us had hinted that some of the tax measures that were being sent to Parliament, were likely to be IMF prior actions. If they were prior actions, then it would have been necessary for full disclosure within context of the IMF. Because remember, some of us have been arguing, and not just now, but in the past, it had been argued that the IMF program, being an international agreement, should go to Parliament. So our MPs would have been deprived of, a bit of, what is their due in looking at the total effects of the budgets and bills that were being sent to Parliament, whether they are purely for domestic reasons or they also include, as some of us suggested, likely to be a prior action. Now, let me also clarify a point. I don't think that we should be blaming the NDC on account of this bill, if we do not get an IMF agreement by the end of this month. And the reason is simple. The number of countries, that would go to the board in March has been published. You can go to the IMF, website. I mentioned this earlier. I think Honorable Kujetua Blackwell has tweeted on it. And so I think it's important that, to know that we may have missed the point unless maybe there is some emergency way of sending the bill to the board. In April also, the IMF, apart from Easter, there is going to be the IMF spring meetings, which normally occurs in April, at which time, the board is preoccupied with looking at resolutions for its member countries, including Ghana. And so the earliest possibly is likely to be the end of April, again, unless it is fast-tracked, for one reason or the other. So I don't think that, anybody should be blaming, the NDC at this stage, apart from the reason which I gave earlier, for any delays in going to the IMF board. In any event, we are yet to be told the true status of the external bond, discussions that are going on. Reuters and others have suggested, that since we have requested, to be put in the common framework, for the G20, I doubt if this also has been put before Parliament. There could be delays given the experience, of how, that procedure moves. So let me pause at this stage, just by way of preliminary, to for you, I don't know, to continue with your line of questioning, because I think that there are technical reasons also why, this bill is a bit of a difficulty for, Ghanaian taxpayers and others, as businesses and others have already indicated.
I'll come to that.
My general position would be, and again, it's important, in the past where temporary taxes have been imposed, and you will note that the fiscal stabilization levy, which should have lapsed in 2017 when we had two additional oil fields, is now being amended and being replaced by the growth and stability, levy, and we can discuss some, details about that, as well when maybe, you come to your next segment.
I will come to that, but I mean, explain to the people of this country what prior actions are. Did we decide that we needed these bills, these new taxes, to help us get an IMF deal, or the IMF is forcing it down our throat, that without that, there's no show?
I don't think the IMF is forcing it down our throat. I remember we were saying that we were not going to go to the IMF. We said it several times. And even when no less a person, including debt restructuring, and even when no less a person than the World Bank president suggested that we should join the DSSI, during the COVID period, we did it. And when he said it again, he was, contested, by one of our deputy ministers. This is a person who has all the information which we give them and more at his disposal. I think it became inevitable that, there was no other option than to go to the IMF. So I don't think we should have any illusions at all, about that. To your question, what are prior actions? They are what we commonly, they are one set of what we commonly called IMF conditionalities. A condition, one, for going to the board. if you read the SLA, and I believe I was on your show, and I pointed out at the time we were saying, we're celebrating the staff, level agreements, that, we were on course. I did mention that we should read it cautiously on your show, that there was a clear condition given for the agreement that was reached. That is one, being the domestic debts as well as the external debt restructuring that, we are currently, undertaking, which can be very onerous, and as we are seeing now. And so we did caution that we should not be celebrating, because it's going to be a tortuous process given, the state, of our debt. So that is a clear hint of first, conditionality of prior action. Now there are two main, actions, and maybe a third. The first is, what do you do to show good faith, to show signals of determination, even before the IMF considers the agreements that you agree, that the agreement you have had with the SAF, the mission, the Ghana mission, before they go to the board. So in the SLA, they are saying, do a debt restructuring, domestic, foreign, before the Africa department, our department's management will approve, and the board will consider it as a condition for considering even the request for a program. So anything that is a request, for the IMF program before, is a prior action. The conditionalities or conditions that come after you have entered the prior action. And let me make a distinction here. We are not going to get 3 billion upfront. We are going to go along the line of the ECF and past IMF programs. The COVID loan was a special dispensation. We got all the money upfront. SDR was a special, we got upfront. Now, when you go into an IMF program, for the 3 years, the staff, and I'm sure you are familiar with it, will come and do what you call staff assessment. Assessments to know whether you are on track. In other words, let me give a simple example. If you say that you are going to reduce your deficit from 11%, 9% to, let's say, 6% or 5%, you would want to show how you are going to do this. For example, annually, I'm going to reduce the deficit by 1%, so that by the third year, I have achieved that goal. And that would come with, what measures are you going to take? Some of them are prior actions, like the tax bill, which we are now being told, is a prior action. Some of them are expenditure measures. I suspect, for example, when the government announced a moratorium on public sector employment, if you remember when the budget was being read, that was likely to be another prior action. So those ones are called performance agreement. Performance criteria pieces, the one that come after the board has approved the things you have said you are going to do, with the staff will come and monitor, and then the 3 billion. Yeah, they may upload, they may give you the first tranche to be, reasonably large, in order that the economy, the wobbling of the economy might be deteriorated, might not deteriorate further. But they would disburse, say, 500 million based on all the criteria, if you have, achieved them. Your tax measures, you have enough tax collection, so you saw that one in your commentary, that the goal was to increase, the tax to GDP ratio from, around about 12% to, the sub-Saharan African average, of say 17.5 or even 15%. That may require whether annually you are able to increase it by 1% or not. So you'll be receiving the amounts in tranches. So let me give you another very specific example. The NDC did the ECF agreement in 2015. There were 2 assessments, including the very first one, partitions and the front loading, before 2017, when the MPP came in. The rest of the ECF was actually paid to the because remember they continued the program, extended it from 2017 to 2018. So the remaining 2 or 3 disbursements, which we have as an authority, is more than what went to the NDC, actually went, to the MPP for the performance, so it's most likely again, should expectations come in, another government may be inheriting, is definitely going to inherit, this program. Mm-hmm. So that tells you the nature of, IMF agreements, the agreements before and the agreements after. Prior actions and then performance criteria based on the performance which you yourself have agreed, with them in various sectors of the economy.
There's a question. If these tax measures do not pass and we still need an IMF program, can we get it?
The question is, does our progress on reform depend on only taxes? Remember, we have had 12, I displayed a table again on your show, 12 levies, and we keep increasing taxes as a solution to the problem. And by the way, I don't think that we should be blaming COVID. We had about 6 to 8, billion, about 3 billion coming from the IMF alone and the World Bank, if you add them together. So blaming COVID, I think, is a bit stale. I've seen that in the memoranda and other things. I think we should face reality that we had problems before, the strike of COVID. But we all know, and we have been arguing it domestically, that part of the problem is expenditure, the high level of expenditure. So you can always substitute expenditure measures for the tax measures, if the tax measures are too burdensome. After all, that was what happened with the haircut. It was thought to be too steep, so government had to make adjustments.
Forgive me, let me interrupt this.
Either a linear tax
yes,
bill,
Mr.
Tekpe,
forgive me, I need to interrupt this because I'm going to Parliament. I sure should be able to give you an update of what's happening in Parliament. And a member of the Finance Committee and the Member of Parliament for Whole Central, Benjamin Podo, joins me on phone now. Honorable Podo, what is happening? You are supposed to consider these bills at 2 p.m. Why has it not been passed or rejected? Why is Parliament failing to deal with a bill government says is so critical towards getting an IMF deal?
Well, the business of the House is conducted when, and according to the agreement between both sides of the leadership. Today, the consideration of those bills we are talking about have been started much earlier in the day. But we have not taken those reports yet. We've dealt with some waivers of tax. We've dealt with questions put to ministers of roads, energy. And at the moment, we are considering the formula for the National Health Insurance Scheme. The NHIS laid the report, brought the formula yesterday. We considered it as a committee of the whole. Today, the committee of the whole report is being considered. In fact, as I'm talking to you now, the debate on that is being concluded by the majority leader, Honorable Oseche Mensah-Bonsu. So we haven't taken those bills, and nobody has explained thus far why we haven't taken them. But we are all ready to take them.
Is it going to be taken today?
Well, that's what I'm saying, that it has not, the reports have not been presented today. The motions have not been taken. Although they appear on the order paper, they have not been taken. It is not everything which appears in the order paper that we take. Some are rolled over to the next sitting day. So as at now, the bills, the reports of those bills have not been taken. No motions have been moved on them.
Now, let me make this point. Of course, I mean, I need to get clarity on it. Was it advertised that we were supposed to deal with the three tax measures today? Tomorrow, you are supposed to go on an Easter break. Exactly what's the plan here? Are you likely ever to deal with this matter today, or it's been pushed to tomorrow?
That's what I told you, that these motions are always listed. Even as we are here now, it was listed yesterday on 29th March. It was not taken. It has been moved forward to today. So it is on the other paper. Okay. But there's no indication that we're going to take it today.
So you're saying there's no indication you are going to take it today?
Not at all. As for being on the agenda, which is what we refer to as other paper, it's been there for a number of days now. But as to whether we will take it today, there is no indication thus far.
What is your leadership? You're on the finance committee, right? I mean, ideally, you would be made to know whether or not your report, which has been laid, would finally be considered. And there's a lot of conversation which is supposed to happen. Your committee is so seminal to this, but this is a business for the entire Parliament of the Republic of Ghana. Have you heard any reason why you will not pass these bills today? And do we know whether the likelihood of it being taken tomorrow is also high?
Well, as for today, it is highly unlikely that the bills will be taken today.
My understanding was that those of you in the minority were opposed to these particular bills. Your position, has it changed? Have you been convinced that this is in the interest of the nation?
It hasn't changed.
Sorry, Honorable, I'm unsure what your last words were. I was asking whether there's been any change in the way.
I'm saying that our position has not changed.
I appreciate your time this evening, and the Member of Parliament for Ho Central is the one who gave us updates on this bill in Parliament. Well, from all indications, we may not have it being taken today. Tomorrow, the Parliament will have to somehow go on an Easter break. So they have a very fine opportunity tomorrow to take it. These three bills, as we've been talking about, and I'll be having this conversation also with a former finance minister, Mr. Tekpe, who's been also touted, as many would know him to be, a man with extraordinary competence in the area of tax administration, and he's dealt with that for a very long time. These bills are the Income Tax Amendment Bill, the Excise Duty and Excise Stamp, and also the Growth and Sustainability Levy Bill. Let me bring in again Mr. Tekpe, and let's have this conversation that we were continuing with. Now, Mr. Tekpe, it appears there's a bit of, as we're talking about, a difficulty with getting the bill passed today. Parliament has a fine opportunity tomorrow to do this again. What I was asking you is perhaps the core of the conversation. Some people in the industry have already kicked against it. One can easily reference the grouping GCCI and GUTA, the traders union. They really feel they will be the last straw to destroy their business enterprise and also worsen the current cost of living and the cost of purchasing goods in the country. From where you sit, perhaps we'll take the one by one, but from where you sit, are these necessary evils we need to make sure we can move forward and save the economy? Some are insisting that without having these bills in place, our economy risks collapsing because an IMF deal will not be in sight.
Yeah, thank you very much. The point I was making is we have had a number of levies, about 12 of them. I displayed them the last, not the last time, but at one point when, I was on the show, if you remember. And we showed that it did not bring in, the totality of all the 14 did not bring in, on average, more than 3 to 4%, of, and that is already including the e-levy. Now, remember that when the National Health Insurance Levy and the Get Fund Levy were being taken from the base of the VAT. You remember that some of us said that this was an indirect increase in the VAT rate. We keep insisting that the VAT rate is only 12.5%. We turn them into straight levy. If you remember, the very industries and you are talking about now, AGI, Chamber of Commerce, were among the first, their members, to start increasing prices when we blocked the taxes they pay on their inputs, because that was what the straight levy meant. So it increased their costs. Then I think they served notice and they started increasing from cement to beer to, that episode happened. No reversals have been made. It's still there. And we are seeing another repetition of that, of the fiscal stabilization levy, which should have lapsed in 2017 with the additional 2 oil fields, remaining to date, and then being quietly, replaced with the being replaced with the growth and sustainability levy. Now, unless the bills have changed, if you go to the amendment, all that is happening is that in the repairs and savings in clause 13(1) says that the National Fiscal Stabilization Levy Act 2013, you are going back to the beginning of the Mahama administration when we're having single spine and others, when that law is repealed. So it's only been repealed to be replaced by another name. And this was a tax that was supposed to lapse, with the last, IMF program, because we have had these temporary levies, right? We insisted that there should be a sunset clause because we always went back to Parliament to give reason, why it had to be extended when crude oil prices collapsed in 2015. This is the first time that we have had these temporary levies, being imposed. Now, the other thing is that the fiscal stabilization levy covered only 5 sectors, of business. The new one that is being proposed is covering 15 category A sectors, right? The traditional ones are there, that is banking and insurance, telecommunications, and now we are adding breweries, inspection evaluation companies, bulk oil distribution companies, oil marketing companies, communication tower operators. It's looking like, a broad-based, tax. We might as well say we are increasing the corporate income tax, rate. Simple. Secondly, it now has a category B, which is based on output, 1% of the gross production of mining companies and upstream oil and gas companies. The very institutions we are giving tax exemptions. Finally, it is saying that all other entities not falling under A or B, which means that any business, including, multimedia, would for the first time, suffer a 2.5%, tax, which is not levy, which is not deductible as an expense, as it has always been. Now, this is a tax that should have lapsed, just like ESLA should have lapsed, and it's on our books. So, how are we continuing to just maintain? ESLA, I remember, has about, 8 or so levies, and they are remaining on our books. So there are some technical reasons. I don't think that, the NDC is the members of Parliament. 1, there's no sunset clause. 2, we have extensively expanded the base, and remember, this is a levy that we have always been using selectively since the Rawlings administration with IMF programs, and then they lapse.
So I need to.
And I was saying,
Forgive me. I need to quickly come in here, Mr. Takpe, because I heard you say that there's no sunset clause. What I hear from a director of revenue policy division at the Ministry of Finance, his name is George Swansea-Winfield. He has had cause to explain that the growth and sustainability levy is a temporal measure expected to apply from 2023 to 2025 to help correct the imbalances being experienced. Is that not at variance with your position that there's no sunset clause?
I have not seen it. I've gone through, so I stand for correction. If there's a sunset clause, it may be coming as an amendment, but the bill that I have, I've gone through it. And so, yes, I stand for correction. If that is the, then it's yes. Then it is responding to one of the concerns, that has been, raised, for quite some time.
But,
so I
but in all fairness, when we were told about the very changes to ESLA, we were told that the sunset clauses were going to be there. But it appeared that ESLA then became a tax in perpetuity, and we're still paying today, actually. You do recall.
It was supposed to be 3 to 5%. That was not the reason it wasn't specified in the law. We were to go back and account after the first year or so, first 2 years on the yes, because it was supposed to settle, liability of government, road sector, energy sector, and others, which, by the way, has not just been extended. As you know, those levies have been increased. Some of them have been increased. Increased, twice, and the duration is, we are now good saying maybe 10 years or so. We're still, despite this collateralization, and we taking some money up front, it is now being added to the debt that should be restructured.
The point I'm trying to make here, from the ESLA experience, can one really bank our hopes on a provision or any belief that these will be for only 2 years? Can we really trust that?
Well, you are making the points which Parliament is making. So if Parliament decides to let go, I believe that it will come with heavy conditions. It may be very firm, But yes, as you said, sometimes we need to sustain, measures that are put in place between, governments. It's not just the ESLA. Remember the PRMA, all the reserves have actually gone, and if we should have, another crisis, tomorrow, crises are inevitable. There will be no 250 million, no 300 million in the stabilization fund. So the no respect for provisions in our law is not just a one for tax or, ESLA. We see it across. Remember, we're going to sweep even the heritage fund, right? So, so back to the point I was making, that, the solution in going to the IMF board does not lie in only taxes. Remember, we were touted and asked to pass the e-levy. Some of us said it's the revenue projections were high, 1.4%. It's come to realize because the base was not correctly, I think it's about time we started looking critically at expenditure as well, and others as a package, in going into the IMF program.
Now, if I get you 100%, you believe that this, what they call a new one, the tax by the name, the growth and sustainability levy should not be passed. And that it's not like, you say there are technical reasons why this tax is not in the interest of the country, if I got you right.
I can't come to that conclusion because I'm not an MP. So I'm looking at, possible reasons, why.
Okay, no, so that's the question.
I'm analyzing the bills for you.
I get your point, but what you have said, which I got quite right, is that there are technical reasons why this bill might not be in the interest of the country. Is it not so?
I see there are technical reasons, past and present, why it is draconian. We have, a number of levies that should have, lapsed. If another example, if you take the excise, bill.
And I was coming to that, then the income tax one. If you want to move on to the excise one, I have no difficulties with that. But the clarity I wanted was on the case of the growth and sustainability levy bill. What you're saying is that there are technical reasons why it is not in our interest. Is that what I hear you saying?
Yes, I've said that over and over, already.
Brilliant.
Together, yeah, particularly from the time when, even the street levies, were promulgated, and businesses were denied their due in terms of input tax credit. Remember, all the levies are adding to costs they are being paid on business inputs, without the right to a deduction, and so, and then they are in existence, the levies are there, and then we say that, the VAT has gone down from 17.5. When you have levies which are even worse than the VAT, and then you impose another. Remember that Parliament has already passed 2.5% increase in the VAT. So you see the things from the perspective of business. This is not going to be the only, VAT has already been increased by 2.5%. So the VAT rate is effectively 20%. If you take it that, the NHIL and the GET fund, were presumptively in all the name, VAT, which is why the input tax credit was being allowed.
Now, I'll come back to you for a second because we still have a brief on the excise duty and excise stamp and the income tax bills that we do. But I'm bringing in a man who is also very well versed in the area of economics. Professor Stephen Adair used to be the board chairman of the Ghana Revenue Authority. And these are revenue measures at the core of it. We understand that not many of us are paying tax, so 13%. We need to move it to the grouping of 18% that those in our neighboring countries actually deal with. Let me bring Prof on the question. Prof, the Parliament appears not to be making any decision on these taxes today. The presumption is that when push comes to shove, we are getting it happening tomorrow. But the minority remains opposed to the taxes. The industry major giants in that space are also opposed to these taxes. They have given sometimes people will consider them good reasons for why they think this is problematic. But according to the ministry, these taxes, specifically the growth and sustainability levy one, is supposed to clear some imbalance in the system. Prof, should we pass them? And are the justifications for mounting these taxes really sustainable?
Yes. That's a very difficult one, which must be seen in the broader context. At the end of the day, Ghanaians must pay our way. If not, we will end up, this will be just not a one-off debt restructuring, but we meet it again. So that is the premise. All of us must know that Ghanaians must pay our way. Our infrastructure development and other things cannot be financed externally. That's number one. Number two, I personally think that in the medium term, we cannot continue increasing VAT, excise duties, and the rest. At the moment, the existing taxes, if we are collecting them, we should be able to hit the 18% you just mentioned. In fact, when I was the chairman of DRA, we had a 3-year plan to raise it to 17.5. So that is the second point I would like to make. And there are many property taxes and other things which are not being collected. But there's a third one. Yes, it is said that if you have something in hand eating, you can wait for the main meal to be prepared. In the short run, raising taxes of all that we talk about, property and other things, is almost impossible. It will take about 2 to 3 years systematic agenda to do so. While at this moment, there is the need to raise a little bit more revenue. And that, to me, is why these 3 tax proposals are before Parliament. I think that in everywhere, when you want to raise money, especially you go for what we call the sin tax, alcohol, tobacco, and the rest, because those sectors cause diseases. So I think that there's a need for us to discriminate, and in the short run, we cannot help but getting, unfortunately, in a developing country, some of the taxes which are easier to collect. And that, to me, increases the tax burden unduly on some people in the economy. So it is a two-edged sword you have to look for. But I wish, that's my last point, I wish the IMF would have said raise this amount of extra taxes, which is about 3 to 4 billion, but not specifically saying A, B, and C. And Ghana, the Ghanaian government and Parliament would probably have had other means of raising the taxes. But this idea of straitjacket as a conditionality is a bit unfortunate.
Now, if they are not passed by Parliament either today or tomorrow, where do we go from here? Are there options?
Well, yes, there are options, because this is not the these are low-hanging fruit. You can easily target them and then get the revenue. But the other options are a bit harder to, but we will have no option but to sort them if in the worst case scenario the Parliament doesn't pass it. Because, for example, the GRA must quickly expedite this collection of property taxes. I think that it shouldn't take months in order for it to be done. Again, the existing VAT rate, I think that by stepping up, we have seen what has happened to the ECG. In Ghana, people don't want to bear their responsibilities. When they decided to shut some government offices, within the last week, they have raked in for the electricity billions, while the government was subsidizing them. So I believe that there are many other options. But the question is, when the old lady goes for water, he will come back better quick. So I think that probably I will advise Parliament to pass it, not because it is palatable, but at this moment, if we don't close the debt restructuring, everybody will pay taxes one way or the other, because when inflation continues as it is, we are actually paying taxes. People don't know that rising price data sense is the same as paying taxes. So that's the way government will get the taxes, by raising the prices, letting prices rise by themselves, and impliedly, higher inflation leads to higher tax collection.
Well, Prof, I am grateful to you, but the last question I wanted to ask you is about getting the IMF deal. We were hoping that we'll do it by the end of the month, but it appears that really is a pipe dream as we speak.
Actually, sometimes I don't know our politicians what is wrong with them. No, the Ghanaians cannot set the timetable. I don't know why the president and the Minister for Finance were saying March. Personally, I knew that they couldn't close in March. When I was in the Commonwealth Secretariat, my main portfolio was monitoring IMF and World Bank matters. And the way things, you haven't finished concluding things with the bilaterals. Then what you raised in the Eurobond, which is from the private sector, you are still discussing with the Chinese. And I don't know why they said March, because personally, some of us didn't want to talk, because maybe if you are not in government, there may be a magic wand they didn't know. But I didn't see how they were going to finish by March. But I can assure you that Ghana will still be on record as one of the fastest moving ones, because normally this takes 6 months to a year for it to be done. And I'm expecting that it will take end of April, slip a little bit if there's worst case scenario, and it will have been one of the fastest in the World Bank IMF scenario and history.
Join us this evening on this one. Professor Snell there is an economist. I'll be having him on specifically because he was previously in charge of the board at the Ghana Revenue Authority that was charged with specifically dealing with some tax measures and raising funds involved in that. A man who was in charge of the entire economy is still joining us from the United States of America. And Mr. Tekpe, the very concluding thoughts you'll be having on this one. If you put all of them together, I was asking Professor Stephen Adair whether there are immediate alternatives that would deliver the same solution and get us as replacements of these taxes. Do you think of any, and should they be the alternatives government will be looking at? Now that you two agree that getting an IMF deal by the end of the month is almost like an impossibility.
Well, we were told that there was an enhanced package, by government, if you remember, going into the budget.
Yeah.
When we requested that we need to see the measures, we were told there was an enhanced package which government was preparing. Now we know that, yes, it may be there, but it may be specific items, but not, when you go to the IMF, you also bring in even sectoral issues, how the real sector is going to help. That's what we call the structural measures. The issues with energy, how are we going to resolve it? Because if you resolve the issues with energy, for example, the liability that is there, again, which should have been cleared by ESLA with all certainty, I'm very convinced about that. You boost the energy sector, so they keep the economy also going. Today we know that the cocoa sector is also, debt-ridden and is being added as a contingent liability to what, is being considered. But we do not have, the package for the real sector, the ones that are the engines, which should be supporting, which should show that growth will go up, because you don't increase your tax to GDP ratio based on only, increases or reductions in tax rates. The other one is administration. Since 2014, 2015, when West Blue, if you like, or single window came into effect on the customs side of GRA, there was the expenditure side, domestic was gift miss. And then there was going to be a domestic revenue, ITAX, income tax administration system, to improve tax administration. It's been 8 years, so we are not in the short term. If those things had been done, we would be in the medium term by now. But to date, the domestic tax revenue division of GRA hasn't got a system. How do you compile statistics? And we are seeing the consequences. If you look at the Income Tax Act, a measure that was, in SMCD 5 is being brought back at this day and age, electronic age, where any business that makes, there are two of them, any business that does not make, declare profits in 5 years or so, would have to pay, a certain tax, compulsorily. Okay. Where is tax audit? Where's the data? And there's tax audit, going to really examine the records for this and not realize that if there's a reason why they are not paying, not bring them out to the point where we could even go to tax, to court. Another one, minimum taxes are coming back again, where, you are going to be paying a presumptive tax, irrespective of size of the business. Or these were measures which were replaced under the Economic Recovery Program and the Structural Adjustment Program in Dr. Butchie's era. They were in the SMCD. Professor Mills was their commissioner. Why are we bringing all of these things back? It's because of a lack of continuous investment in the domestic, tax system, right? So training, since the merger of GRA and GRA and IRS, these were the integration. And the integration is not just, bringing two organizations, in name. It's involved improvements in their processes so that they can, contribute the tax administration end. So the solution is not just in increases. I mentioned that another solution lies also, in looking at expenditure critically. If it was looked at, beyond, what ministers and others are paying, well, so be it. Otherwise, we need to see some of those things. So I think it's time to see the whole package, everything as a package. And let's not forget that IMF usually agrees. Yes, it comes across as an imposition, but some things come across as an imposition only if there are no alternatives, that has to be. So, Raymond, I think that, these are some of the technical reasons, as I said, where these things should be examined carefully. Remember that the excise duties that we have from mineral water increases, aerated water, non-aqua. Yes, they are punitive, some of these. bottled water. Water is not, in the punitive range. So I suppose what is being targeted is the bottle, and the plastics that are used, to contain these things. Yet, of course, the ghost is coming, is hunting, so sachet water has been, excluded, as though it were the cheapness of the water which is attracting the excise. Otherwise, you would exclude poor people and the low-income people, from the tax on whiskey, beer and everything. Apetition, by the way, is coming in. So you see the inconsistency in the tax measures also, that are, being promulgated. They seem selective, and so and the other point, the last point I wish to make on these exercises is that, remember, and that's why business is concerned, all of these increases from the levies, whatever, they are all indirect taxes, apart from the income tax measures that we spoke about. And they are going to go into the cost of production, right? Apart from businesses, it may make our economy non-competitive. You may have products and things produced not just from outside, but from Cote d'Ivoire and other places coming into the country, because of the open borders we have in ECOWAS. So I think, in summary, the measures need to be looked at, in order that they do not become productive, because we have had a precedent already. All the levies, as I said, has not increased the tax rate. The highest revenue, and not tax, but revenue to GDP ratio that we had was in 2015, which is said it's not been better, despite, the oil, the energy sector expanding, despite that is pre-COVID. So some of these measures were, pre-COVID, they were already struggling.
My final question is about racing against time. Are there alternatives that can be considered now before we get a deal? Since we are not looking at the end of this month, I mean, if we are getting an IMF deal in April, are we still able to fish out, put together an alternative plan to this all-important 3-in-1 tax handles that we are putting out there?
Yeah, and with all due difference to Professor Ade, who was advisor to the Ministry's advisory, body, when I was both a deputy minister and a minister, we seem to be rushing now, and no less a person than the, IMF and World Bank, managing directors and the presidents have been given assurance that they will do all it takes, to get us to the board. It's left with our own effort to get there. So they themselves seem to be anxious. We seem to rush. One, because the condition might deteriorate further. Two, because, we delayed, and the condition, became worse. So it had to be rushed. So if it's being rushed, it is not because, of, we all know, it is not because of, the better skills or whatever we have in, we have a lot of experience, including the MPP, by the way, under Honorable Safumafo and others in going to the fund. It is because of the critical nature where we are. We can't go to the bond markets. We are hanging on only treasury bills, and these are very serious matters, and that is the concern which the international community, has. So yes, we should, come together and look for, the way forward. And I think it has to be comprehensive. I said it, to repeat, we have to look at the real sector, measures. Of course, that is where the World Bank, African Development Bank, and others come in, with their support. And then we have to look at the revenue measures, look at expenditure measures, and look at, the electronic things that were being put in place, including all expenditure being put, into the gift base. So it gives us a good picture. As we speak, we have, as of 2021, and we're in 2022, we've come to the end of 2022 and into 2023, we are sitting on nearly, 80 billion, Ghana cedis of arrears. From the government's own report, I think the true real amount is 76 point, close to 77 billion, and so these are all measures which one is not even certain has been reflected adequately, going forward.
I need to thank you so much for joining us from your base in the United States of America. The former...
I'll be home soon, Raymond. I'm not here for good.
Okay. Now, well, former finance...
You know, I'm doing a visiting scholar assignment, you know.
Okay.
I've always taught. By the way, I still teach my classes in Legon.
Oh, okay. Well, visiting scholar with virtual teaching opportunities from Legon and former Finance Minister Sector. Many thanks to you, Professor Stephen Ade, and also thank you so much, Benny McPodo, for giving us an update from the Parliament of the Republic of Ghana, where, as we speak, they have still not taken the 3 bills government says will solve the problem of the economy through an IMF deal. Many thanks to you for watching our front today.
Every day, people have money emergencies. Ma, I need my school fees emergency. Mommy, chop money emergency. Emergency. Catch it. I'm in rent emergency. Now, there's a new emergency number in town.
More money, challenge and enjoyment. At the top life we got.
Dial star 770 hash for all your money emergencies and chop life.
Dial star 770 hash for money emergencies and get easy and quick access to your money, loans, and other banking needs. EcoBank, the Pan-African Bank.
The biggest family picnic in Ashanti is back. It's the only avenue where families eat, drink, and have fun with other families. This Easter, the Love FM family party in the park will be mind-blowing. There will be a lot of kids playing items like trampoline, bouncy castles, electric train, merry-go-round, stationary aeroplane, horse race, face painting, TV games. Get ready for the adult corner with some back-to-back irresistible live band music this Easter. So start putting plans together and let's have the biggest family picnic experience ever. The date is Easter Monday, 10th April 2023 at the Rattray Park, 8 a.m. sharp. Rate is a cool 10 Ghana cedis. The Love FM family party in the park. Easter Monday. We simply can't wait.
And yes, it would have deserved murder.
This is impactful journalism. It provides context and meaning to the different perspectives.
Children are born with sin, and therefore if you don't baptize them and they die as children, then they will go to hell. This is funny.
This is impactful journalism. It provides context and meaning to the different perspectives. This is JoyNews Hotline Documentaries, compelling stories changing the status quo.
The all-new Executive Lounge is tailored to highlighting corporate brands and bring you closer to the C-suite executives of various organizations. Premiering in this edition is SIC Insurance PLC.
For the top 10 insurance companies in Ghana, if you look at the management of each insurance company, there is at least one person who has to work at the managerial level in SIC. That is the story of SIC. It also, we produce the best.
You can trust us for claims payment. We have the dedicated staff, we have claims handlers that can always handle the claims. In fact, over the years, 5 years, we've paid over 300 million as claims.
If you want to measure the health of a company, you are looking at its liquidity and its solvency. On these two fronts, we have done well to improve the liquidity of the company by putting in place a prudent investment measures that make sure that constantly all liabilities fall in due are handled.
The Executive Lounge starts showing on Saturday the 1st of April at 12 noon on the JoyNews channel, with a repeat on Sundays at 5 p.m. and Wednesdays at 10 p.m.
Prime Headlines is brought to you by
Don't take risks. Use a condom every time.
And thanks to Malatu, I kicked out malaria one time.
Some spices, yes, sir.
Live on the Joy News channel, also on Joy Prime, and also my JoyOnline.com interactive app. This is Joy News Prime. This evening, expect doomsaw because for the next 14 days, Ghana Gas is undertaking some maintenance work which will lead to power outages. We have the load shedding timetable. Meanwhile, ECG staff teamed up with prepaid vendors to steal more than 2 million cedis worth of prepaid credits. Also, High Court orders Minority Leader Ato Forson to open defense on allegation that he played a key role in procurement of defective ambulances, resulting in a loss of more than 2 million euros. And with barely 24 hours for Parliament to go on Easter vacation, the House has still not yet approved 3 key revenue measures, which government has said is crucial to getting an IMF bail. At the top of the hour, Beverly Broom has prime business.
Pensioner bondholders gives government a 2-week ultimatum to settle their payment of matured bonds. They are threatening to resume picketing.
Followed closely is Prime Sports.
Well, the Confederation of African Football has unveiled 13th January and 11th February as the commencement and end date for the 2023 Africa Cup of Nations tournament in Ivory Coast.
Details and more shortly. We're live on DSTV channel 421, GoTV is 144, myjoyonline.com, and all our social media platforms. I am Emefa Apao. Please stay for details.
Joy News Prime Headlines was brought to you by
Don't take risks. Use a condom every time.
And thanks to Malatu, I kicked out malaria one time.
Some spices, yes, sir.
Thanks for your company once again. Well, is it doomsaw or doomsaw? Well, the next 14 days, expect some interruption in your power supply. We're told by the Electricity Company of Ghana that a load shedding program will be released by close of day today or tomorrow. This follows a maintenance work that is being undertaken by the Ghana Gas at the Atuabo processing station. Well, we'll be hearing details from the Electricity Company of Ghana shortly on that particular program. But first, let's hear from the Director of Communications of Ghana Gas, Ernest Owusu-Bempah.
The engineers thought it wise that we need to do some major maintenance routine, and hence the shutdown. And one of the key ingredients that has contributed to the reduction of doomsaw and all those recklessness going on is because of the fact that we have a good maintenance culture, and that has helped us in terms of maintaining the gas processing plant. They're looking at the whole gas processing plant from where we extract the raw gas from to where we transfer the gas for power generation, LPG, condensate, and the rest. So the whole gas processing plant is like a machine. It's like a car going to the mechanic for servicing. I think it's starting from April. We have what we call a tie-in. Ghana Gas processing plant is supplying almost about 110 scarf. Sankofa is also supplying. So the combination is giving us about 350 million scarves. So if Ghana Gas stops, the rest of the other is shut down. The rest of the other gas and pushing it to Abuazi processing plant, Abuazi for thermal generation. So obviously, we're going to be having gas. And then WAPCO has also assured us that they will also be pushing gas to the eastern enclaves as well. So a combination of that with a little bit of support of heavy fuel to also power some of our thermal plants. I think that is going to be, we're good to go.
Well, earlier, the Energy Ministry directed the Electricity Company of Ghana to come out with a load shedding timetable following that announcement by the Ghana Gas Company. Well, that is about to happen. But let's hear from the Communications Director of the Electricity Company of Ghana, William Boateng, interacting with my colleague, Blessed Suga, on the pulse.
It's across all our operational areas. So all the regions where ECG operates, the southern zone of Ghana. So we are talking about Ashanti region. We have Western region, or the two Western region and Western North. We have Water-Uti, Central, then Greater Accra, including Tema. So we have Accra and Tema. Of course, Koforidua. So we are talking about the southern zone of Ghana. So 4 groups in each region. So if you take today, Group A is going off day. Then all the Group A's in all the regions will go off. Do you understand?
Right. So it's even taking effect from now.
So the grouping is A, B, C, D.
Right.
Accra, A, B, C, D, Tema, A, B, C, D, Ashanti region, A, B, C, D, Central. The grouping is said that we are saying that you'll be off for 5 hours and you'll be on for 3 days. That's going to be the general rule.
That's how it will be looking like for the next 14 days, so get ready for it. The load shedding timetable, as in when we get it, it will be live on myjoyonline.com. Also, we'll bring you details of it right here on the Joy News channel. We'll stay a while longer on the power generation company, that's ECG, and they've taken some criminal action against some hotels that have illegally connected to the power grid. They're still on with their revenue collection and disconnection exercise. A number of institutions and facilities have been disconnected from the grid. We're told about Hillbury Hotel in the eastern region, that's in Ebri, and they have illegally connected to power. There are some concerns on that. Let's hear from the External Communications Officer, Leila Abubakar, providing further details on what they've done so far.
It's almost, it's jaw-dropping, it's abysmal, too blatant, and I think that there has to be a national call to this. I mean, yes, ECG has its own shortcomings here and there, which we are trying to solve, most of it engineering problems. But it looks like a large number of people intentionally steal power. And it's not any...
Thankfully, Leila Abubakar joins us via Zoom here on Joy News Prime. Thank you so much for joining us. Let's get updates on what you've been up to. I know about Hillbury. We've been seeing disturbing videos there, and you've been talking earlier to us about the measures that have been put in place. But bring us up to speed on what you've been doing so far in terms of the revenue generation and disconnection exercise for today. Hello, Leila. You have to unmute.
There you go.
Great.
Hi, MFA.
Yes, we can hear you loud and clear now. Thank you.
Great. Just before I speak about our revenue mobilization exercise, let me make one correction. Your previous story, which also still lies within ECG. Mm-hmm. It's no longer 14 days.
Okay.
The load has been shed for 7 days already, and so we just have about 7 days more to go. It ends on the 7th of April, and so people shouldn't expect to be off 14 days. It's no longer 2 weeks. And so
we've experienced the first 7 days already. So it's still 2 weeks, but the 7 days is gone. Okay.
Yeah, it was painless because a lot of people didn't realize it. We just think it's right to inform Ghanaians that this is what is happening so that it would not come up as if we weren't being honest with our customers. We thought that Ghana Gas could finish the maintenance that they were doing much earlier, and so we're just waiting to see how far we could push them to work harder. But it seems the load of work to do is quite chunky, and so they're requesting an additional 7 days, which we are going to continue with, and so it's not going to be as horrible.
Okay, so we're expecting a timetable, even though we've experienced the first 7 days already.
It will be published online tonight and in the traditional media tomorrow. I have a hard copy here, but it's so much that I cannot actually speak on it.
If you could just let me in on my area, which is the Accra West area, what is it looking like? At least we know that on Monday we went off for 5 days, 5 hours, and now we are told that it's going to happen. So maybe just let us in on that area. What does it look like? I know it's ABC.
it will be very hard for you to see.
Okay. I get it.
You see the font size. These
Okay.
are all Accra, and I cannot possibly begin to look at
I get it.
all the names in there. It's so much. And so I think the best thing we'll do is just put it up so that people can scan through our website and get the information. We'll also publish it in the graphics.
Once we get it, we'll definitely disseminate that as well. Thank you. But let's talk about that revenue generation. So far, though, before we get into the exercise itself, so far, I know it's a revenue generation and collection, drive. Do we know how much we've made so far in terms of collection?
I may know, but I'm not allowed to speak on that.
Okay.
I think I already told Evans earlier on that I would leave that to our managing director to announce when he gets back into the country. I think it's
is it anything close? Is it anything close to what you set out to collect?
I cannot say, but it's a lot of money. It's really impressive. I'm sure you'll be impressed when you hear the numbers, and then we can go on further to talk about other things that ECG can do to maintain the momentum.
Okay,
but it's looking good. Yeah.
But in your rounds, what's the most shocking that you've seen so far ahead?
I could go on for days about that, but I think the one that affects me the most is just how much power is being stolen. We have the facilities and the networks that are going around. We invest so much in it. We invest in metering, even though we have issues with that. Our guys are on the ground 24 hours, ready to fix problems. But it looks like we have a problem in this country where people just don't want to pay for the services that we have provided. Mm-hmm. And so anything that they can do to cut down on that particular cost that they have incurred from ECG, they will do. As far as stealing, which is a criminal offense, we've been lenient for so long. I think that it's time that we look at these issues separate from all the other things that we go through and start prosecuting people seriously. Yesterday, I had reports that the team that was in Legon took 3 people to the Legon police station where they will be processed for court later. It's going to be a thing that Ghanaians should expect to see more, because the moment we catch you and we're able to prove that you have done this intentionally, you would have to face the music.
And there were some institutions, we've been talking about the Hillbury Hotel. What's really the update on it, that master disconnection that you've been embarking on? What's the latest on that?
Well, Hillbury is just one of the many hotels that we have found out to have bypassed them. For them, theirs was more shocking because of the intentionality behind it. Because for someone to be able to dig ground, wire through, and connect directly to source, it means they were really looking at stealing power. Whereas some people give the excuse that, I didn't know, the electrician that wired didn't tell me. And there are a plethora of reasons people give usually when we catch them. But this one was very, very intentional. When the engineers put the equipment around our meters, they realized there was no current flowing through. It means they had just bypassed and had, created their own service line that they were just feeding through. For how long they've been doing this, only God knows. So we are trying so much to rectify the situation with them. We have informed the region and they are taking it upon. I think our legal directorate will look into it and prosecute. Also yesterday, if you'd allow me, we went into a community near Dansuman, where there is even more stealing, and they are even more bold. I think it's the same for Ada as well, where when ECG finds out that these people are stealing and they disconnect, they go back to reconnect, sometimes in less than 24 hours. It is something what they're doing. It's blatant, it's criminal, and I think that we should really tackle this as a separate case. It's just that people have.
Well, this area we are told is town council line. I don't know if I'm correct, but let's talk about the safety of your officers in terms of this whole exercise, because we're told that in some instances they were threatened, others were locked up amongst others. How are we ensuring their safety?
For many of them, our customers are very understanding, especially when they know that they haven't paid their bills. And so they are open to friendly conversations and discourses when we get there.
Okay.
And what is that we have to do, we do, and we get out. For some of them, obviously, we didn't expect 100% of our customers will be so nice and understanding. What we do is that sometimes when we know the problem areas, we go in with security. Like yesterday when we were going to Pambrose, we went with policemen who were guiding us. with places that weren't expecting there to be some hesitation in allowing us to do our work, we usually have the National Security and Ghana Police on speed dial. And we just called it. And we also informed the nearest police station to that area that we are coming in. So please be on standby when we call, come and help us. And that was what happened at the Ghana Police, at the Ghana Post when our men were held hostage.
Okay. Leila, we'll leave it here for now. Thank you so much for your time here on the Joy News channel. Well, Leila Abubakar is the External Communications Director of the Electricity Company of Ghana. And as we speak, we'll still stay with the Electricity Company of Ghana because we know that today some staff who are supposed to have siphoned some 2 million CDs, they teamed up with prepaid vendors to steal more than 2 million CDs from the company. We're told the gang, numbering 10, have been slapped with charges including money laundering and stealing. Legal Affairs correspondent Joseph Akable joins me via Zoom with all the details from happenings in court today. Joseph, break it down for us. What actually transpired?
So the employees, 3 of them, there's one Ali Nancy Shaibu, who is a computer programmer at the ICT department at the head office here in Accra. There is also Grace Gardner, a chief supervising cashier officer at the ECG district office at Kaswa, and Anthony D.K. Kwe, a technician at the ECG district office. The other accused persons, Ibrahim Baba Ademu, a technician at Ghana Electrometer Company, Muntari Ademu, and Gariba Audu Misbao, Kwesi Pia Donko, Eric Yauche, and Augustina Lanian, who are private vendors who sold ECG prepaid power credits. And so we are told that the whole plot started with the ICT officer here in Accra, who was dispatched to go to the Volta region to resolve a prepaid connectivity challenge. It was while resolving this that he agreed with the individual who had the challenge that he was resolving for, that what we'll be doing is that I will transfer credit to you for sale. And so once he transfers the credit, he deletes the transfer from the system. And so assuming I've advanced 10,000 cedis to you as a prepaid vendor, I delete it. And so the system doesn't show that you've been given 10,000 cedis. Then once you sell the 10,000 cedis, we split the money 2 ways. And so that commenced there. And he now teamed up with other vendors in different parts of the country to undertake this particular activity, leading to the theft of what ECG estimates to be 2.1 million cedis in prepaid credits.
Okay, Joseph, from your understanding then, let's talk about this software manipulation scheme that's going on at ECG.
And so we are told that it's not a situation that the software has been permanently disabled or tampered with. It simply has to do with the fact that each time they went in to do the transaction, then they cleared their footprints in there just to make sure that the transaction is not seen. And so that afforded them the opportunity to be able to sell credits and make money on the blind side of the public. And so what ended up coming into the ACG's coffers was very minimal, and the head office, which has the mandates at various levels. So if you go to the district office to be monitoring the vending points within, could not even see that such transactions were taking place.
And we understand some monies have been refunded?
More than 200,000 cedis. According to the prosecutors, once these 10 individuals were arrested in the course of investigations, they admitted to their crime and refunded a little over 200,000 cedis. The other point is that the investigators have been able to identify about 3 vehicles, as well as 2 houses belonging to some of the accused persons, which the prosecutors believe that they acquired them using the proceeds of this particular crime. And so it is for this reason that's why the charge of money laundering has been leveled against some of them. But interestingly, when the charges were read against them in court, all 10 accused persons pleaded not guilty. And so that is it. So the case would have to go the full haul and is back in court on April 27.
We'll stay in court, but Joseph, just before I let you go, on a lighter note, please don't be giving examples about transferring money to me, okay? I'll take you up on that. Thank you very much, Joseph. We'll stay a while longer in the court because Accra High Court has ruled that minority leader Dr. Kaysel Atuforsen has a case to answer on the allegation that he played a key role in procurement of defective ambulances. The transaction has resulted in the loss of more than 2 million euros to the state. Attorney General called 5 witnesses, including the Health Minister, Kuami Eugene, to testify against Dr. Forsen. Lawyers for Dr. Forsen urged the court to acquit and discharge him since a case had not been made requiring him to respond. Legal Affairs, Joseph Akable, once more.
Dr. Forson is standing trial together with former Chief Director at the Ministry of Health, Seth Animana, and businessman Richard Jakpa. The state is said to have lost more than 2 million euros because of the procurement of defective ambulances. The minority leader and other accused persons have always maintained their innocence.
The coincidence speaks volume about the motivation for these frivolous and baseless charges. In fact, I call it e-levy charges. A cursory reading of the frivolous and politically motivated charges shows that my only role in the entire transaction was to have signed a letter on behalf of the Minister of Finance.
The Attorney General disagrees. Through 5 witnesses, he insisted that the 3 accused persons have a case to answer. The case against the minority leader borders on 2 letters he authored. The main one had asked the Bank of Ghana to establish letters of credit for the ambulance supplier. The AG contends this was contrary to the terms of the contract, as payment should have been made only after pre-shipment inspection. Lawyers for Dr. Forson, however, argue that issuance of letters of credit does not amount to payment. They also insist he wrote these letters in his capacity as Deputy Minister for the Finance Minister, tasked and authorized by the Finance Minister, Seth Tekpe. The court, presided over by Justice Ifia Saribotre, in its ruling, noted that every party in the case admits in one way or the other that the ambulances imported into the country were defective. On the question of whether Dr. Forson was authorized to write the said letter, Justice Asaribotre said lawyers for Dr. Forson seem to have misapprehended the law. The court said once the AG stated that Dr. Forson did not have such authority and Dr. Forson replied that he had seen, the responsibility was on him to show that he had the said authority. Evidence before the court, he noted, shows that Seth Tekpe even told prosecutors he did not have much information when he gave his statement. All 3 accused persons have been ordered to open their defense. The case is back in court on April 13.
Let's stay on legal-related matters, and it is any non-military personnel selling, buying, or possessing military accoutrement could land one in jail for a year or pay a fine of 3,000 cedis or both if caught. Head of A Partners Law, Samson Ladi Anyanene, explains that the law to prevent people from abusing military materials was passed in 1967 and is still very much active. His explanation comes after 8 members of the Ashanti Regional Branch of the NDC were questioned by the police for allegedly wearing military camouflage at a campaign tour of the former President John Dramani Mahama. Well, the party is defending its members, insisting they did not wear military uniform. We can hear from the Deputy General Secretary of the party, Mustafa Gbande, demanding that the Ghana Armed Forces provides proof or evidence to prove the aid wrong. According to him, it's a political agenda set to intimidate NDC members.
The invitation of our officials in Ashanti region is political, and I'm saying that if the commander raises his eyes beyond political lines, he should see that what they were wearing was not a military uniform. It may be a material close to the look of a military uniform, but not a military uniform. The law is very clear on that. So they should stop intimidating people. If the state institutions, that is the police and the military, are now awake and willing to do the right thing, we are happy. We are more than willing to cooperate and to bring sanity. It is bad to see a noble institution like the police and the military's uniform being used by journalists, being used by musicians, being used by invisible forces, being used by operatives of political parties. If that is what we'll do, then we should stop everybody and put a measure to it.
We can now hear from lawyer Samson Ladi Anyanene.
Actually, a law in Ghana passed as far back as 1967, and as far as I know, that law has not been revoked, it has not been repealed. It is the restriction on the use of military uniform and accoutrements Act. It prohibits, clear prohibition of anyone who is not a military officer or in the armed forces wearing their uniform. You are only allowed to wear it, may only be allowed to wear it if you are, say, an ex-serviceman, or it is that the president has approved that you should wear it. And often these will wear it for ceremonial purposes only. So you are not supposed to wear You are not supposed to buy. You are not supposed to sell. If someone is selling, you are also not supposed to buy. If you do that, you are violating and breaching that law. And you could be punished for with a fine of not exceeding I think 250 penalty units. That's 3,000 Ghana cedis. Or you could also go to jail for 1 year, or both. You will be fined and then you go to jail.
Well, let's get some perspective of a security analyst on this. Joining us is President and CEO of Institute of Security, Disaster and Emergency Studies, Dr. Ishmael Norman. Thank you so much for joining us here on Joy News Prime. Well, this is a concern. We've been hearing from the NDC questioning why the military or the police or security agencies are accusing these men of wearing a military uniform. They say it's something close to it. Then the question remains, how then do we identify that this is a no-go area, this is camouflage that we can just use, or is it that we should all steer clear of camouflage? You'd have to unmute, sir. We'll try and establish connection again to Dr. Ishmael Norman, and you get some clarity on this particular situation, because the NDC feels that these men are being just victimized on political grounds. But we've been hearing from the lawyers on what the law says about these camouflage. But let's see if we can reconnect to Dr. Ishmael Norman on this. What actually qualifies to be a military accoutrement? What we see in the background, for instance, if I wear that, does it mean that I'm wearing a military uniform? What can I do? To what extent can we go when it comes to that? But it appears that the connection to Dr. Ishmael Norman is not allowing for that conversation to happen. That's when we do get him, we'll speak to him on that. But let me take you to Parliament, because this issue is still raging, and more sponsors of the promotion of proper human and sexual values bill have confirmed alleged orchestration by the LGBTQ community to unseat them. I'll pause on that briefly and take you back to Dr. Ishmael Norman. Thank you so much once again for your time. Hopefully I have a better connection. So I was asking, at what point do I then identify that this is a military accoutrement or not, or should I just stay away from anything camouflage? You have to unmute, sir.
You can hear me?
Great. I can hear you.
Okay. All right. I think the order sometimes is totally wrong. The Ghana Army does not have the copyright control over the military fatigue that people are wearing. The order is very, very clear. NLCD 177 says no one should be allowed to use military uniform unless they are permitted. Now, unless they sew the attire to the precise specification of the Ghana Army, the print itself is not owned by the Ghana Army. I speak not on behalf of GAPSI, even though I work there. I speak on the authority of the rule of law. In order for you to have copyright control over any design, you should own it. Ghana Army doesn't own it. If I buy it from the open market and I wear it, I make it into a suit, and you arrest me, that would be wrong. If I sew it into some kind of make-believe military uniform, that's a little bit too much, and it will be right for them to stop them from using it, but they shouldn't arrest them. Because in order to sew to the specification of the Ghana Armed Forces uniform, you must know what the specifications are, which they recently published. So just because I'm wearing the print, you cannot just arrest me. For example, the Chinese, they have their own design. The Americans, they have their own copyrighted design. So if you use the Chinese military fatigue, you will be arrested if you use the American one. But if I buy a design from the...
Oh dear. It appears we've just lost Dr. Ishmael Norman once again, but at least he made the point very clear on that particular situation that we are faced with currently. He's a president and CEO of Institute of Security, Disaster and Emergency Studies, and back to issues about the proper human sexual rights and Ghanaian family values bill, and it's been laid today in Parliament. However, those proponents are saying that they are confirmed alleged orchestration by the LGBTQ community to unseat them from Parliament. We can hear from Roxanne Nelson Dapamakbo on that.
Let me put this matter on record. You are aware that they are even influencing our politics these days, the gay community.
How?
Yes. Some judge hasn't told you.
No.
What is happening? We are under attack.
As in politics, as in your primary? So
yeah, it's that they think that we are the strong advocates, so we can be removed from Parliament. When we are removed from Parliament, the advocacy goes down.
Oh, okay. But that's an interest, of course.
Yes.
But that makes sense.
They are influencing our elections.
Yeah, but of course, you are advocating. So if you lose your primary, you're not going So in your constituency, have people come to run against you with that?
Why? They can sponsor from afar. You don't have
you noticed that happening?
Yes, we've noticed it. We've been alerted. So it is not something we are taking lightly. These people are on a vendetta. They are on an agenda to ensure that this bill doesn't succeed in Parliament.
Actually, you're just not being paranoid on this one.
We are not paranoid.
They want you out of Parliament.
The people want us out of Parliament. I'm sure if you
don't have any evidence. I'm sure you are.
We have evidence.
Okay.
We have evidence, but we are speaking to the fact that these are people who are not sleeping.
Is it Ghanaian led or foreign led?
It is always Ghanaian led with foreign influence.
Well, the country director of Amnesty International, Genevieve Pattington, says the bill in its current form is discriminatory and it will promote hate.
It promotes hate crime. Let me give you an example. So if people are perceived to be lesbian or gay, and let's just say me, I'm in a hotel room with another lady, and someone decides to call and suspect that I am a lesbian, it can promote hate crime. Because what if I am not? And just as we catch thieves in Ghana and we do instant justice and mob action, this can also increase mob action towards this community. So this is one thing I feel is not good. I think the bill is vague in terms of what do you define as advocacy or supporting? What do you define as, okay, we are upset about this bill? I think it's very vague on those terms.
That's Amnesty International there. But let me bring in Whole West MP Emmanuel Kwesi-Bejra, one of the proponents of this bill, and the concerns that have been raised by Roxanne Nelson Dapamakbo. Let's check on him if that's the same situation he's faced with. Thank you so much for joining us via Zoom. If you'd unmute, we've been hearing from your colleague Roxanne Nelson Dapamakbo mentioning that it appears that the LGBT community, they are sponsoring some candidates against them to unseat them because their voice are the loudest when it comes to this particular bill. Has that been brought to your attention, and what's your own situation?
Thank you very much, and good evening to your cherished listeners and viewers as well. Yes, we had some, we read on the social media as well that some group of people are sponsoring people against us, especially the 8 members of Parliament who are supporting this bill. We've heard it.
But I'm sure that you've been interacting with some of your colleagues on this. How real is it beyond just hearing it on social media, amongst others?
Well, yes, just as I mentioned, we've heard it, we've read it, but nobody has come out boldly to say that, yes, indeed, we are being sponsored by this group of people or community against you. And so for now, it is a hearsay, and also it is something that we have heard. We haven't seen anybody in action. We are waiting for anyone who will be bold enough to say that, yes, indeed, we have been sponsored, or we are being sponsored by the community to come and unseat you. Then we will take it from there.
Well, is this of concern then to you, knowing that the primaries is just around the corner, May 13th? Is that of concern to any of you?
Well, it's a concern to all of us because if you look at the survey that was carried out by CDD as well as USAID, it shows clearly that Ghanaians do not want this thing to happen. And therefore, I don't think anybody, not even my community or my constituency or any of the constituencies of the 8 members of parliament or any constituency in Ghana will want this to fetter and continue in this country. And the earlier we allow this bill to pass, the better.
And thankfully, it's been laid today. Any significant changes? We know that it's been the jail term, we are told, from 5 years to 3, and issues about advocacy has been addressed. Any significant changes, and how hopeful are we that this bill actually will be passed?
Today, I'm one of the happiest persons in Parliament because apart from it being laid the first time on the 20th of August last year, the report itself from the committee has also been laid today. And thankfully, we are grateful to the Speaker as well as to our colleagues on the Committee of Constitution, Legal and Parliamentary Affairs. The report has been laid today. That's the second reading. The second reading will take place either tomorrow or as soon as we return from recess. And MFR, you know that if a committee agrees that they recommend for the House to approve, subject to their recommendation to the amendment, then we are on our way out. It is not a majority report, it is a consensus report, and therefore we are happy that it will carry the day. And in fact, one of the things that we have discussed with the Speaker is that after the second reading, we will not take a voice vote. As many who wants to support us should stand. And so there will be a division. If you don't support this bill, let the whole world know that you don't support this bill because it has created, what he has created in this country. So most of us will be standing. If you don't support it, then we'll see whether you support or you don't support it. And go back to your constituency, tell them that you want to promote LGBTQI in this country. Now, looking at the bill itself, a few amendments have been proposed. Some came from the Attorney General. Actually, what Attorney General brought has been taken care of by the committee as well as we promoters of the bill. I can give you a typical example. The first one has to do with the title, the short title of the bill. Initially, the short title of the bill has to do with what we call proper human sexual right and Ghanaian family value. We've taken the word proper out, and then we've taken also the Ghanaian out. So it is not proper human. It's not promotion of human sexual right and family value. And so it's no longer promotion of proper human sexual right. It's now promotion of human right and family value bill. That is the first one. And so it will also affect the long title. The long title will take those things out. And then we'll look at the sentencing regime as well, which I heard you commented on it. And so we'll look at a few things. Largely, the bill will not, even though we have done some amendment collaboratively between us and the committee, it will not change the content, or it will not change what we really wanted to do.
Mr. Bejra, we are grateful for your time. That's Emmanuel Kwesi Bejra, Whole West MP, joining us via Zoom. Let's take a quick comment from the Deputy General Secretary of the NDC, Mustafa Gbande, on LGBTQ community allegations that they are sponsoring some candidates against these 8 MPs who are proponents of this particular bill. Mr. Gbande, thank you so much for joining us via Zoom. So has these concerns come to the party's attention, and how are we hoping to address it?
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
I think that, let me state that I do not have express instruction from my superiors to state a position of the party as far as this subject is concerned. But the only issue where I come in is when our members of parliament allege that there's a seeming sponsorship from the LGBTQ communities against them in their communities and in their various constituencies. In our guidelines, we do not have any provision that seek to bar a sex of one person or the other to be able to qualify to contest. Number two, we have not also defined sources of funding as far as parliamentary campaigns are concerned. Much as we have our individual opinions about this subject matter, it is rightfully an issue in Parliament, and the unanimity of Ghanaians in terms of whether or not they support or against this discussion is very sacred because it is happening in the House of Parliament.
Okay.
And so it should remain there. But where it is being imported into constituencies and stuff like that, I believe that if that comes to our attention, the question will be whether or not their opponents are also gay members or they are not gay members. So this discussion is not really a subject matter of consideration. But I believe that it would not be fair if they migrate the issues happening in Parliament, being petitioned by religious leaders and government institutions into our internal politics. Because the party having got any clause, any provision that sort of discriminate or sort of deal with this issue as a subject. As it stands, no official complaint have come to us.
Okay.
The party hasn't issued any formal or official position as far as these matters are concerned. But I also believe that if a gay or LGBTQ community pursue MPs to their constituencies because they are pursuing a business of Parliament, I believe that is not fair.
Okay. Mr. Gwande, we'll leave it here. We'll leave it here. Thank you so much. But on a lighter note, are you teaching? I can see pineapple, banana on the screen behind you.
We are planning to unseat Nanado and his government.
Okay, that's how we
the business of planning.
Thank you so much. That's Mustafa Gwande, Deputy General Secretary of the NDC. We're taking a quick break here on Joy News Prime. There's more when you log on to myjoyonline.com. We're right back after the break. Please stay with us.
Hey, Charlie, what number? The malaria really knocked you down, eh? Charlie, no joke. Fever, headache, vomiting, loss of appetite. I couldn't even eat my usual fufu. You and your fufu. But I hope you got tested before the malaria treatment.
Yes, I did. And thanks to Malatu, I kicked out malaria one time.
When malaria strikes, take Malatu, containing artemether and lumefantrine. Comes in tablets and suspension for effective treatment of malaria.
Great to have you back. Thank you.
No problem.
Malatu is suitable for adults and children. Manufactured and distributed by NS Chemist Limited. This advertisement has been vetted and approved by the FDA.
My name is C. I'm a person living with HIV. I got to know of my HIV status when I became pregnant. Since then, I have successfully been delivered of an HIV-negative baby, thanks to PMTCT services. I follow the guidelines and take my HIV medicine called ARVs every day to date. This makes me strong, healthy, and prevents me from passing HIV onto my baby. Please avail yourself of PMTCT services when pregnant. It is the only way to ensure that you do not transmit HIV onto your baby during pregnancy, birth, and breastfeeding. Even if you have tested for HIV recently and was negative, test again when pregnant. If you test positive, take the baby back to the hospital immediately after birth, as directed by your healthcare provider. The baby will also be given medicine immediately after birth and tested to ensure that both mother and baby are well. Let's work together to have a generation free of HIV.
Our children must be free to shine.
Fortune rice. It needs just a little water. The grains don't stick and the aroma and taste are delicious. Fortune rice, always on point, just like mom.
Now introducing Fortune Emopa, your tasty Ghana rice for all your rice meals.
This advert is FDA.
Every day, people have money emergencies. Ma, I need my school fees emergency. Mommy, chop money emergency. Emergency. Catch it. I'm your rent emergency. Now, there's a new emergency number in town.
More money, challenge and enjoyment. At the top life we got.
Dial star 770 hash for all your money emergencies and chop life.
Dial star 770 hash for money emergencies and get easy and quick access to your money, loans, and other banking needs. EcoBank, the Pan-African Bank.
In a fast-paced daily life, we all need to breathe a little. Day by Day Women's Skincare enhances your skin with long-lasting effects thanks to their active cosmetic ingredients. It is time for yourself. Discover the new Day by Day Women Body Lotion range.
Dummy dribbles to the right. He's got an opportunity on the edge of the penalty box. He's gone past the defense. This must surely be it. It's in! It's a goal!
With only 1 cedi 50 pesos, you can win up to 16.5 million Ghana cedis in the Betway Atina Ketia Jackpot. A jackpot muhine. Bet responsibly, not for persons under the age of 18. This advert has been approved by the Gaming Commission of Ghana.
Investment Limited.
Welcome back, and let's zoom straight into showbiz. And Becky, with a good hair, she's here in the studio.
I'm right here. Well, MFA, it's a beautiful day. It's a Thursday. Tomorrow's Friday. We're all excited. Irene Logan, beautiful voice. Recently, she sung the national anthem for America. Just recently inside Cape Coast. I caught up with her also recently, and she's been talking about what she's up to, and also did mention about her More song.
Testimony. The Holy Spirit gifted that song to me, and it's always a blessing when I see people who have listened and have been blessed by it. So yeah, thank you. What are you up to? I'm working very hard. I have a fashion brand called Tribasa, but also I've been doing ministry work. Unfortunately, I know I haven't been in the media for a long time. It's intentional, until I have something to talk about, which this year is coming up. So I'm excited. I love my life. I love the learning process I'm on, and I'm excited and grateful.
I'm also excited and grateful that we had that conversation. Let's talk about Davido. Emeka, do you know that finally he's confirmed that he's married?
Oh, to Chioma.
Yeah.
Definitely, I've never ever taken this kind of break. So, just being away and, I've had a lot to think about. So definitely time to rest, reflect on a lot of family time, and definitely time to